Mr. Whitson, just checking that you can hear us.
I can hear you well, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second that motion.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Moving into presentations. Dr. Grinsley.
Good afternoon from your Panther family. We have wrapped up our first quarter and winter sports are underway after such a strong showing from our fall athletes. Huge congratulations to all of our athletes and to our girls volleyball team for their incredible regional victories. Lady Panthers receiving individual accolades were second team all-region player Beth Barron, first team all-region player Savannah Loving, Abby Atkins, and Summer Shackelford. Savannah Loving was also named the VHSL Region 1B Player of the Year, and our own Coach Courtney Atkins was named the VHSL Region 1B Coach of the Year. Could not be more proud of our teams this fall, and we are so excited to see what winter sports will bring. Last month, RCPS recognized Native American History Month. The Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, the JEDI team, invited guest speakers to the schools throughout the month to highlight particular topics, including a special presentation from former RCES teacher Nicole Clark for grades pre-K through 4 about Native American culture, tradition, and food. Elder Councilman Jerry Fortune from the actual Rappahannock Indian tribe came to the high school to speak with students about what it was like growing up in segregated schools and brought regalia to show the students. And finally, journalist and documentarian Mr. Jeffrey O'Gara shared clips of his documentary, Home from School, The Children of Carlisle, depicting the lives of children who were sent to the Carlisle boarding school for Native children. The students were very engaged by all our guest speakers, and a deeper learning of Native American culture was certainly enriched by this experience. November is also known as a month to be thankful, so we were so thankful for all the hard work and pride our students have been demonstrating at school and in the community. Our National Honor Society students volunteered at the food pantry in order to help with the Thanksgiving drive. Additionally, I don't know if you saw that, highlights of the FFA, of all the things that they're doing in our community, adopting families to provide clothing, hygiene products, toys, and even providing firewood. Through hard work and many hours of after-school and weekend time, cutting trees, splitting wood, and delivering to families. They're all doing this work themselves. At the program's inception, the FFA adopted 8 families to get through the holiday season. This year, just 2 years later, FFA adopted 48 families and is doing all this for them. So we're so proud of these amazing students. Finally, a huge thank you to all of you and Mr. Curry for helping us finally bring the county emergency recommendations to fruition with the delivery of our new generator, which will enable our schools to be open as a community shelter should the need arise. We thank you so much for your continuous support of our schools and our community. Your collaboration is so appreciated. And I also attached the calendar of events for December. And this week, I hope you'll join us for the Holiday Extravaganza concert. You will see all the amazing things our Fine Arts Academy is producing, including 6th and 7th grade, the 6th and 7th grade band, and our regular band, jazz band, concert band, a cappella group. So it's meant to be a really great evening, so we'll hope you can join us. Do you have any questions, sir?
I don't have anything, but thank you for the update.
Thank you.
Chair Donna, it's Kurt Whitson. I have a couple of questions for the superintendent, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Grimsley, thanks for the update and congratulations on all the success with all the athletic programs this fall. I missed it all, but hopefully next year during winter sports I can witness some of it firsthand. I have two questions for you. The first one, I saw a social media post, I guess it was last week, by one of your high school instructors, Creighton Gordon, and put simply, I just have to say, it made me so happy. He was, as you know, up in Philadelphia for the annual meeting of the National Social Studies Council, and it just, I found it inspiring to know that you have faculty members who are availing themselves of continuing education opportunities and are doing so on their free time. I believe the conference spanned at least part of this weekend. My question to you is, to what extent are you funding and also encouraging continuing education opportunities like this for your faculty members? I'd just be interested to know what, if anything, we as a board can do to encourage more of this, because clearly to have your instructors out there learning how to better do their jobs and enrich themselves is a positive for everyone. That's my first question, just what you can tell us about your funding and support for continuing education opportunities. And then my second question, since we're about to jump into budget season, I wonder if you could let us know, looking ahead to your next academic year and budgeting, what your enrollment numbers are likely to look like and the extent to which those enrollment numbers might put more pressure on us from a local school contribution standpoint, and to what extent those enrollment numbers will either help or hurt the state contribution into our school system. Thanks very much.
Certainly, and it is great to hear your voice, and the questioning definitely indicates you're back, so I like that. So ask me whatever you want. As for your first question, thank you so much for noticing that. We do at Rappahannock try to cultivate a culture of continuous learning and professional growth. And one of the arguments we've had from a small rural standpoint is that there's not a lot of funding that goes to supporting that kind of professional growth. So we've done a lot over the years to do quite a bit of grant writing around that issue, because we can be the most amazing community and administrators that we want to be. At the end of the day, it's truly your teacher, your classroom teacher, who has the only direct impact on student achievement. And so much has changed in education over the last 5 years that we really do have to keep up with the craft and hone our craft of teaching, keep up with the latest and greatest technologies, the sciences behind it, the mental health. It's kind of a really difficult time to be an educator. What it costs to train, and then of course what you get back in salary is very disproportionate for a lot of reasons. So I really appreciate you recognizing how heroic really the teaching profession is right now. So with that grant, we do focus on complete teacher wellness, which is morale, but also professional growth. So we have had quite a few teachers take advantage since after COVID. A lot of conferences shut down during COVID. So we weren't able to do some of those conferences, but we have sent our department chair to an educational classical learning and literacy conference in Texas. We had our Fine Arts Academy coordinator and band director go to New York and Chicago, and another one coming up in January to be inspired. We have a team right now at Vista in Virginia Beach doing Virginia the science of technology in education, and so many more that this grant can make possible for our teachers to stay inspired and continue to hone their craft. Additionally, we are supporting incentives for teachers and staff who wish to further their education in degree programs. So we offer much more in tuition reimbursement than any of our surrounding regions, so we do support that as well. And then, second question. So our enrollment numbers, I think I've said this before, that our kindergarten class did come in a lot lower than we anticipated. So when that happens, you're looking at a smaller cohort for many years, so because that came in a lot smaller, we're starting our budget development about $80,000 to $90,000 short in the hole. So in your planning for next year, we're okay this year, but so that's going to be a little bit of an uphill climb. We finally have found a sweet spot, I think, with our staffing and doing what's best for students, especially in the primary grades, keeping low class sizes for those grade levels, especially now post-COVID and some of the issues that have arisen. The new Literacy Act being enacted is going to require a lot of training, which we have already gotten a jump on the last 2 years with Orton Gillingham training for dyslexic students, but also it's good for phonological awareness for all students, plus letters training and more curriculum literacy training for early learners and for your language learners as well. So I feel like we've met a sweet spot with that, but when this happens, of course, it's always tough to justify, okay, the need is so much greater in education. I think everybody is seeing that now. But when you have fewer students, how do you justify those and balance those costs? So we're going to do the best we can with that, like we do every year, and be as creative as possible, continue grant writing, but we appreciate your help looking at any of those gaps.
Thanks a lot for those answers, and please extend to Mr. Gordon my appreciation for his initiative and the continued education work up in Philadelphia. Thanks a lot.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Thank you, I so enjoyed the volleyball games. Yeah.
Thanks, Shannon.
All right, now we have Superintendent Kenny from the Shenandoah National Park.
It's the superintendent hour, I guess. So, well, thank you for hosting me today and giving me a chance to come in and chat with you all about the park. The park's a really vital part of this community and all the communities that we serve. It's interesting to be located in 8 counties and continue to try to build these relationships. I'm going to touch on a few things. I'm going to touch on just general visitation. I know that that's always an interest to the communities. I'm going to touch on Old Rag pilot, the pilot project we ran for the management of Old Rag to help with the congestion and things. And then just some general updates on some other efforts going on that I think you guys will find interesting. And please interrupt if you have questions. So visitation in 2022, we kind of feel like we're kind of going back to sort of what I would say normal was, pre-pandemic levels. Through October, this is through October, we came in at about 1.3 million visits. At our peak in 2020, we were at this same point at the end of October, we were at 1.5 million visits. So if we project out for 22, we'll probably end the year right around 1.5 million visits. Again, 2020 was kind of the hallmark high level in the pandemic. We ended that year at 1.7. We obviously had those busy weekends in October when fall colors upon us. I happened to drive over Thornton Gap on a Saturday. We were backed up on 211, about a mile back this way towards Sperryville, about a half mile towards Luray. Obviously, those are still challenges. We got to continue to work on those. But we are doing some work on them, and I'll touch on this. We've actually entered into a partnership with the Federal Highways Administration. It's an organization within the Federal Highways Organization. It's called the Volpe Center. It's sort of a think tank project management office that helps you look at complex transportation issues and tries to help come up with some solutions and some ideas. We're very early in this process. The team was just out here. We had hoped to get them out here in October, and unfortunately half the team got COVID and couldn't come in October. We had them actually scheduled to be here for the weekend. They ended up coming in November, so they did see the park, but the visitation had definitely trailed off. But the good thing about this organization is they're kind of these cutting edge folks, and they're helping us look at what data we have, what data gaps we have in our knowledge base, and then hopefully some ideas on how to fill that data in. One idea that they definitely are very interested in, and they use technology. They're very up on the use of technology for collecting information of how people travel. There's programs, things like Streetlight, and things where we may be able to capture some data. We'll be reaching out to the Virginia Department of Transportation to talk to them because they're actually utilizing some of this data as well. And there might be some ways to get some questions answered. So as a fairly newcomer, I've been here about 2 years now, still looking at how do people come and go from this park. What's kind of the expression of art is how does this place breathe with cars in and out? I mean, how many people are entering from Front Royal? How many are exiting at the south end, at Rockfish? Are they kind of in and outs, coming in and out of entrances and things like that? So that's an opportunity. That's an opportunity to partner with communities around the park as well. So we'll keep you posted on that. Like I said, the team from Volpe was just here a couple of weeks ago. So they were just digesting the place and seeing the traffic flows. There might be some opportunities to meet with them, with the county, and we'd welcome that if you're interested. So that's kind of visitation as a whole. About right now, my forecast would be we'll end the year about 1.5 million visits in 2022. So it's still up there. I think the general trend is visitation is going to continue to grow. So moving on to the Old Rag pilot, this is a project that we started. We're testing a way to manage Old Rag differently. to help alleviate some of the congestion, both at the parking level, well, basically the congestion on that road, Madison County, a little bit of Rappahannock in there, but we had problems with parking down there. We also had congestion and issues up on the mountain. We did some work in 2019 that really showed. We had queue times up in the rock scramble of over an hour, hour and a half at times. That's not the visitor experience we're trying to provide. We also, as people, it's like us in traffic. We can't sit still. You watch people jockey for lanes. Same thing's happening up there on the mountain when we're backed up. And we had people trying to cut off the trail, what we consider social trailing, to get around where congestion points are. There are sensitive resources. The rock outcroppings have sensitive plant species that we're trying to protect. So obviously that's not the situation we want to have. We also, as people start hurrying in the rock scramble, we start to see more injuries and things like that. So we're hoping, by managing visitation. So the goal was we set the cap at 800 tickets that were available on a daily basis. We sold 95,000 tickets over the year. So we've ended the pilot for this year. About 50 days, we sold over 700 tickets. We're still analyzing all the data. In addition to the ticket data, we had staff up on the mountain monitoring queue times and wait times, trail counters and things like that. So our plan moving forward, we haven't made a decision of whether we're going to move from a pilot into a more permanent situation, but we're putting the data together, looking at the data. Our plan is to go back out to the public and share that data. What did we learn in this pilot? And then take some feedback from that. Ultimately, to make a decision and hopefully have something in place come next year, whether that's to return back to the way we were or to modify the program and continue to require tickets. So again, no decision yet, but again, there'll be an opportunity for the public to provide us feedback. The feedback we have received has been fairly positive. I happen to know some landowners on Nethers Road and gotten to meet them and talk to them. They seem to be happy just from a local resident kind of idea of not dealing with this heavy congestion down there on a daily basis during the peak season. We've heard a lot of positive feedback. As obviously I've gotten some comments that are negative. People don't like having to get a ticket. It's another step in the process to plan my trip. But at the same time, the experience once they get there has been more positive. So stay tuned on Old Bragg. We'll keep you posted. Be happy to come back and talk to you some more once we have better analysis of the data. Just a couple other little things that are going on that I think are important. I talked to you the last time I was here about the Great American Outdoors Act. This is a fund source that the Park Service, all the land management agencies can get to cure what we call deferred maintenance backlog. I'm sure the county can relate to owning a lot of facilities that you never could seem to keep up. And this was a fund source coming off of oil and gas revenues that was allowed for the land management agencies to compete for. We captured $30 million so far. That money, right now we have a project that's working its way through. We did some work with this project on Skyline Drive to maintain the road. The bulk of the work, it will be done next summer on the drive. We also have a project to do some demolition of some obsolete structures within the park that are non-historic structures, but where you don't have a purpose for them, and they sit on our books, which is something we're trying to deal with. We have outstanding ask of about $65 million for projects, mainly to deal with water and wastewater systems. Many people don't realize how many systems we manage in the park. We have 4 major wastewater treatment facilities, many drinking water systems. Most of that $65 million ask is towards that. We won't know the way. There's a process in this law that required us to consult with Congress. Once the packages are put together, those go up in the president's budget. So hopefully in 24 and or 25, we'll see some additional monies. Many people ask me about the concessions, Skyline Lodge, Big Meadows, the Waysides. That contract does come to an end in 2024. We're in the process of developing what we call a prospectus, which is a request for proposals. So Delaware North is the current holder of that contract, but that contract will be, go out for bid again so that we would have a new contract in place, not necessarily a new contractor, because Delaware North definitely is interested in staying, but it is a competitive process, and they will be in place for the 2025 season. They've run, just so you get a sense, that lodging runs in the 70 percentiles for occupancy, which is by all standards in the hotel industry is an outstanding occupancy rate. They did great on lodging. Their retail was down a little bit this past year. Mainly the thinking from the company has been retail was down, and they were hearing that in general, that was a place where people were pulling back a little bit as the economy softened a bit. They still wanted to stay in the park, they still wanted to eat in the park, but they might give up on the t-shirt or the hat or something like that. Was a way to save some money. But overall, it was still a really good year for them. And again, that's contributions to the local economy and bringing those people here. The last two things I want to touch on is I want to thank Christine Smith for attending the Blue Ridge Committee. The Blue Ridge Committee was created, I don't even know how many years ago, by the Commonwealth to help build better communication between the 8 surrounding counties and the park. It sounds like that things have gotten better over time about that communication, but when the committee was created, it was a time when communication wasn't that good. I think, I've been a champion trying to get that committee back alive, but between the transfer of Jen Flynn and me coming in, and with COVID, it was really hard to keep those kind of groups going. We are able to meet, it's been probably a month or so at least.
Yeah, I think it was middle of October.
Right, we met and had a really good conversation. Nelson County is not an adjacent county, but they also attended, so it's really 9 counties. It's an opportunity for me and the park staff to work with, a group of people representing 9 of the counties that are around the park. So I really appreciate the commitment by Rappahannock to have somebody there. And then the last thing I'll share with you is just to make you aware, is that December 16th, the continuing resolution for the federal budget expires. We're not hearing anything about that as far as internal baseball or inside baseball on the future of the budget. That usually doesn't come till a couple of days before the deadline expires. Let's cross our fingers that we get something in place before the holiday break happens. But I just wanted to make you aware of that. So hopefully we won't have any sort of shutdown for the holidays. With that, I'm done, and I'll take any questions if anybody should have any.
I believe Mr. Whitson had a question.
Superintendent Kenny, thanks a lot for coming and speaking to us. It's always good to hear from you, and we obviously value the national park and having it comprise so much of our county. I just had one follow-up question on the Old Bragg pilot program, and I wonder to what extent you and your leadership team have entertained the possibility of expanding that program to other common problem or high traffic areas. And the two that come to mind, Little Devil Stairs in the Smiths district, and then also White Oak Canyon down in Madison County. Are those at all on the radar for this type of pilot, just for traffic management and then visitor experience enhancement purposes? Thank you.
Kira, it's real good to hear your voice. Glad you're back. I think the thing with Old Rag is definitely one of the biggest challenges we have in the park. You can give me a hit list. I can go to some of the other counties and hear some other options of areas that are having congestion and that. I think what we're trying to do is refine a tool and see if it works, and make sure it's not an arduous burden on a visitor. There is both of the areas. White Oak definitely is a challenge, and some of the residents that live down by White Oak continually talk to me about the concerns there, parking. We've been trying to solve some of the parking issues down at White Oak through a lease with the with a family, a landowner down there, and that's been slow going. Little Devil's Staircase comes up occasionally, and we definitely have seen growth at Little Devil's Staircase from the days of maybe 4 or 5 cars or maybe 10 cars there on a weekend. I know I've had reports of like 40 or 50 cars spilling out of our small parking area at the end of the road, back down the road. So obviously those are concerns as a park manager, in keeping good relations with our neighbors. It's a concern of how much use can those areas sustain. So I won't rule out any tool, Kier, in managing visitation to help ensure we provide a high-quality visitor experience and also protect resources. The thing at some of these, and I think Little Devils is a great example of this, is we control a very small parking lot, and the county doesn't really have you guys have, it's not your road. I'm still getting used to that all roads are state roads. I've lived in lots of states, and that's not always the case. But we need VDOT to be a partner in this conversation about Little Devil's Staircase, of how do we solve an issue there. I know that there are residents, Christine and I have talked about this, about residents that aren't happy with the congestion and some of the human behavior that happens when you bring a lot of people to a remote part of the county. So back to I'm kind of giving you a long answer, Kier, but I'm trying to say that, yes, all these are options that we would consider. Right now, I'm trying to figure out the pilot from Old Rag and try to make a decision about Old Rag to see if it's the right idea or are there different ideas that we could do at some of these other locations. Hope that helps, Kier.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the answer, I appreciate it.
I just wonder with the Old Rag pilot program, if there were a handful of days where you sold 700 tickets or more and the cap was 800, was there any point where someone would have gone to buy tickets and the tickets would have been sold out?
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember. If you look at our graphs, and it was, I think it's like 18 days to 20 days, something like that. We actually sold out of tickets.
Oh wow, okay,
And it's mostly Saturdays,
right.
which you wouldn't be surprised by, I'm sure. Sundays were the next peak day, and then some of the Monday holidays that fall in there are peak days. It's pretty intuitive,
Respect.
right? And obviously fall months, October, when color is in, then you started to see higher levels during the week. I know I did it in October on a Thursday. I bought a ticket. I did it on my time off with a friend, and I was actually kind of surprised at how many cars were there on a Thursday afternoon when we got done. So
Interesting.
we'll be able to show you all that data as we get our staff's working on a report that'll slice and dice the data to really kind of get a sense of it. I know one of the questions is some of the early days in the week, you're not anywhere near, 800 people. So do we need a ticket for then? So those are some of the questions that are coming out from the public.
Or is there a way to make Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Wednesday a happy hour
Yeah.
on the park? You get a discounted price or
Right.
whatever that would make people switch their days.
Do you have an idea, thank you for the update, by the way.
Sure.
Do you have an idea of when you'll know, when the public can know what direction Old Rag will be going in? Because I believe it started last March, correct?
Right, and we ran it through November 30 was the last day of the tickets. So our staff is starting, right now is the holiday time, so it's hard to get everything done. But we'll hopefully get the final report done. And early 23 Van was when we'll go out and show the public what the data says and ask for some feedback. And then my goal is to have a decision by spring, if we can possibly have it.
Got it.
That's the goal.
Got it.
That sounds good.
Thank you so very much. We really appreciate the update.
Sure,
For you to
anytime.
come here and do it in person, thank you.
Oh, anytime. Thank you very much. I appreciate the partnership we have with the county. We really, Gary's always quick to answer my calls, so I really appreciate that partnership. It's nice to just know you're here and you care about the park, so thank you.
It's
Thank
nice
you.
for us to know that
Thank
you're
you,
commuting from Rappahannock County.
Exactly.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, and I should add too, I know last year or two, there have been some concerns from folks that go over the mountain past the entrance that there's been a backup in the left-hand lane also, and I didn't get any of those reports this year, just that the right-hand lane was backed up.
No, I know, just some personal experience, obviously, there's always those folks that just try to dive bomb in at the very end.
Right.
We did have a little bit of that. One of the challenges this year, and it's happened in the past, but we need to fix this one. If you look at our two exits coming out at Thornton Gap 211 and then even on 33, when you come out of the park, you still have an at-grade crossing to go east again. And we had a few incidents on some of those busy October weekends. So it's an area that we are exploring and want to talk to VDOT about if there's a way to partner on those peak weekends for help with some traffic control or something along that lines up at 211. That left-hander coming out of the park can be a little scary, especially when cars are stacked in where your view. It's a tough left-hand already because of the geometry of the hill and things like that. So
That's good to know, and VDOT's here today, so that's very convenient.
He's been hearing everything you've said.
Thank you.
I didn't play to the
Penny.
crowd, did I?
Thank you. Wow,
Thank you,
quarterly VDOT update, Mr. Nesbitt. You two should talk.
Maybe I'll stay and listen.
Thank you for having me today, and Mr. Wilson, it's good to hear your voice as well.
Thanks.
The quarterly update for VDOT is kind of similar to last. You have my monthly report, and currently we're in the process of we're getting ready for the winter months, and we've been doing all our preparations, ordering materials, doing some training, getting our folks back up to speed, our equipment ready and everything. So we're ready for whatever Mother Nature brings us this year. It's looking, you always get predictions, whether it's going to be a hard winter or a mild winter. What I'm hearing is it's going to be a sort of a continuing the mild winter type. So that's not a bad thing, and hopefully that'll be true. But we've had a pretty good year. We've been been as responsive as we can be as our resources allow. We right now currently have just a handful of work orders that have not been completed. So we're trying to keep up with them as we go through the year. We've responding to grading gravel road issues are one of our major complaints. We've been battling the dead tree issues with the emerald ash borer problem. So we've taken those down as we can, responding to a few traffic requests that we get here and there. But most of our complaints are typically pavement, gravel road maintenance, and ditch maintenance and things like that. But we have been coordinating with Mr. Curry on a monthly basis with our traffic staff and my staff to make sure that we're up to speed on things that we're coordinating as we go by, and of course we respond to requests I get directly from you, the board, as we get them. So I don't look for any major changes next year for our program. We're fully staffed at our maintenance area headquarters. We will continue to provide the best service we can with the resources that we have. We'll do some more surface treatment of some of our secondary roads next year. I don't have an exact number of linear miles, but I'll have that for you early next year. I plan on providing I haven't done this before, but I plan on providing in January or maybe early February sort of an annual report which will summarize our activities for this past year. I'd like to have some crash data for you so you'll know kind of what the crash patterns look like in Rappahannock County and compare those to statewide trends, and try to have that information for you, as well as some of the maintenance what the maintenance complaints are, what those trends are, and we'll see what that looks like. I'll get it to you, and we can build on that as we go. But So like I said, it's good to be here, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate you coming. I just wanted to say thank you again. Last year, we had a really soggy time on Turkey Ridge Road, and your guys got out there and fixed it pretty quickly. And I really appreciate it. It's a tough road. So thanks for doing that again.
You're welcome.
And I know that I'll probably be hearing from residents this year if we get a soggy year, but I really do appreciate what you did.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you. Pass that on. I'll pass that on to the
Yeah,
crews.
I think David and some other guys took care of it.
Yeah, they're very responsive.
I am wondering if you can give us an idea on, when you put in a new culvert, I have to believe there's some sort of formula that new culvert goes in, you wait 6 months, you come back and see if it's sinking in or if it needs paved over again, or I assume there's a strategy there, and I'm just wondering, instead of me sending you emails about particular culverts, if there's a timeline that I can just expect.
Well, you're right, and it's not a written policy, but we do monitor those, and if they get, this is more of a judgment thing from our superintendent. If they get, too bad, they'll come back and level them out and redo them. But I know I got a request from you to look at one up in Chester Gap, and we'll certainly evaluate that, and if we need to level that out, we certainly will. But there's, like I said, there's no written policy, but our goal is to try to keep them, as level and smooth as possible.
Okay, so notification that there's one on Resettlement Road that's got, basically the side of it is dipped down so much that it's pooling in water and you don't notice it until you run over it. You'd like to know about those.
I would like to know about it, and it'd be a little disappointing if our guys hadn't already seen it and planned work for it. But anytime you see something like that or hear or someone reports it to you, please let me know. And
Okay,
we'll take care of it.
thank you. Anyone else?
I did notice, thanks for coming out today, and I appreciate the idea of having some proactive reporting. I think that sounds like a really great idea. And I did notice that some of the guardrails on the bridges in Sperryville are pretty banged up, and I'm imagining that's already on your radar too. It looks like they're already marked for work.
Yeah, if it's a crash or an accident, we will mark it and have our contractor come in and repair it. Sometimes over time, they kind of get, trees fall on them and things like that. They'll get banged up. But typically, we pay more attention to the end treatments and make sure that we get those repaired pretty quickly. But if they're marked, that does mean they've been identified and they'll be repaired.
That's good to know.
And I will, I'm open to, coordination with the park on some of these issues. We certainly, parking is always a problem in the spring and fall, and from spring till fall. And so we certainly don't have an issue working with the Park Service on those and any other issues we have.
Thank you for helping with the signage during the peak weekends in October for people going to the park to stay in the right lane. Predictably, we knew that would pop up as an issue at least 1 or 2 weekends, so I think that might have helped.
Yeah, that was great to see coming down the mountain that it was marked so well. Thank you for sparing a sign and sending it our way.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Happy holidays.
Y'all know where to find me.
Thanks so much,
We
Mark.
do.
Thank you. See ya.
All right, the fourth presentation is from Josh Roller with Robinson Farmer Cox and Audit.
And Josh is joining us online via Zoom.
Good afternoon, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you all for letting me join virtually today. I had kind of a last minute personal situation that made it impossible to be up there, so I appreciate that. So you should have the report in front of you. If not, I could share my screen and go through it that way, if that would be better. I'll leave that up to you all, what you want me to do.
They have the report. I can pull it up on the screen myself, and as you drive by page number, I can navigate there.
I'll go by the page number at the bottom. This is easier. PDF page. I'll go by PDF page since I'm seeing that you have it up there. So If you go by, PDF page 11 is where we'll start. So this is the independent auditor's report. This is where we're issuing our opinion. This year, the opinion, the kind of the format of this, especially, and also some of the wording has changed from prior years just because of new accounting standards. And nothing changed with, the actual audit work or the actual, opinion itself. It's just the order. Now that it makes a little bit more sense that opinion is the first thing you see in there, which is an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion for the county this year. And on to the next page, page 12 there. This is also a little bit of new language where it goes into a lot more detail about the responsibilities of management for the financial statements, as well as the auditor's responsibility for the audit of the financial statements. Again, nothing new procedurally, what was actually occurring. It's just a lot more has to be disclosed in there comparing to prior years. So if you're looking at last year's report to this year's report, there's nothing that came about as a result of our audit. It's just kind of standard language that has to be in there now. So flipping forward a little bit onto page 17. Page 17 and 18, these are your entity-wide statements. So these are, your actual statements, fund statements, budgetary basis. Then it also adds in all of your long-term assets, your capital assets, your long-term debt, as well as all of the pension and OPEB items there. So it's a little bit not as useful as the fund statements, but the one thing here compared to prior year as well is that third column over, that broadband authority. That is new this year, and obviously the new authority, so that is included there. So flipping forward to page 23, page 23 and 25, exhibit 3 and 5. These are your governmental funds, fund statements. Exhibit 3 is your balance sheet there. As you can see, your general fund, and the new fund there, that ARPA fund compared to prior years. Previously, the ARPA fund was small enough that it didn't have to be reported separately there, but it reached the size that it now has to be reported separately on governmental fund statements. So on the more pages there, page 25, this is your your statement of revenues, expenditures, and change of fund balance for your governmental funds. Your total at the very bottom there, your total net change in fund balance for all governmental funds, that 1.7 million, right there exactly. And of that, in the first column there, that's your general fund. So you can see your net change in fund balance in the general fund was that 1.6 million. That's after transfers of 1.2. So from there, I'll flip forward quite a ways onto page, let's see, page 40.
Could we just take a moment to note
Yep.
that the PDF page and the page
Yes.
in this does not track. So when we're getting page numbers, can we give page numbers in the
We can give
paper
both.
copy?
We can give
Yeah, we can
Please,
give both.
thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, PDF page 44, and at the bottom, page 29.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
There's a little bit of difference just because we don't number the blank pages, so there's always a little bit off there. So this is at the bottom, this is your long-term obligations where it breaks out your long-term debt as well as the other long-term liabilities, your pension and OPEB, as well as the landfill, accrued landfill costs. The one thing you'll see in there, that lease liabilities, that is new this year as a result of GASB 87. Previously, operating leases are were recorded as, rent expense in the year that the check was written, and that was kind of the end of it. GASB 87 now requires any long-term lease where you're now actually required to record that as the full value of the lease. You're required to record that as a fixed asset depreciated over the life of the lease. And then the other side of that is to record a liability for that remaining balance of that lease agreement. So you'll see, references to GASB 87 and your long-term obligation, they're there as well as in the capital assets, and that's what that is. So from there, we can go forward.
Josh, we usually get a question on your outstanding debt, which is on that next page, 30, which you can see 3 years left of one bond
Great.
as of the close of 22. Go ahead, Josh.
Correct, yeah. All right, and so on forward quite a bit to PDF page 93 and page 78. Copy there. This is the start of the new lease note. There's quite a bit of disclosures, kind of scheduling out all the different leases that were recorded and kind of the amortization of those future leases. And the last part related to GASB 87 on note 26, page 98, or page 83 on the paper copy. So again, just a little bit more detail explains exactly what we were doing there, where you're beginning, just in the primary government there, you're beginning lease asset was 219,401, your beginning lease liability was 219,401. All right, and from there, to page 103 or page 85 paper copy. This is likely the most useful financial statement for the board, for management. It's your general fund budgetary comparison schedule. Takes out all of your revenues and expenditures for the year based on original final budget, and then your actual column there as well. Again, that out of that last page of this statement, so 108 or 90, this shows that net change in fund balance again on that 1.6 million. So from there, there's quite a few schedules in here related to pension, OPEB, kind of a little bit of historical data there that's required. So we'll skip forward a little bit on page 142 or 122. These next three statements are new, related to that broadband authority as well. Again, these match up to those Exhibit 1 and 2. This just gives not a whole lot more detail, but a little bit more detail, just kind of standalone statements there. And from there, we can go to the compliance section. So page 161 or 138. And this letter here, this is our the auditor's report on internal controls or financial reporting. And as part of our audit, we test certain controls over various parts of the control structure of the county and school board. As a result, we have no matters to disclose in here. The two different levels of matters in an audit are a significant deficiency or a material weakness. We have neither of those to report. And flip forward 2 more pages. This is our independent auditor's report over federal compliance or uniform guidance. Is kind of what governs that federal compliance piece. Again, here we have no matters of non-compliance that need to be reported, so a clean opinion here. And again, this is another area where that language of this letter is changed a little bit. As you can see, the opinions at the top comparing prior years and some additional disclosures there, but nothing changed in our actual procedures, what we have to kind of test and what we're required to do. There's a little bit more has to be shown in the letter itself. And so page 167, 143 is the last thing I'll point your attention to, and then be happy to field any questions. These next 2 pages, this is the breakdown of federal awards broken out by those federal assistance listing number in the second column there. That's kind of the federal identifying number, how they track it. And so federal expenditures for the year. On to the next page is 2.7 million. That includes the county, that includes social services, as well as the school board, so kind of all combined, that's the total. And from there, that's, kind of my brief summary, and I'd be happy to field any questions. I know you guys just very recently got this report, so if something comes up where, after you have a little more time to review it, feel free to, reach out to me or reach out through Mr. Curry, and we can get you some answers for anything you have questions on.
For the board's benefit, this month, Robinson Farmer Cox will help us submit documentation to the state, which is a deadline requirement, and then the chair will certify that he presented this to you in December and you will have met all the state's requirements.
So Donna, it's Drew
Yes.
Woodson. I've got some questions if I may.
Yep, yes, sir.
My first question relates to what was just said. I just wonder why we can't get a copy of our audited financial statement at least a bit before our December meeting each year. I think we all do our best to scramble through and ask informed questions, but I just wonder why we can't get it a little bit in advance as opposed to the morning of our meeting. That's my first question. I can just keep going and then just take notes. Second, just as a matter of best practice, I wonder if all county authorities, right, should be reflected in our financial statement. Right now, as you pointed out, the broadband authority is there as a newcomer, and then historically the water and sewer authority has been there, I believe, because we handle the payroll. We have at least one other authority in the county that's not at all reflected in our county government audited financial statement. So I just wonder if it would be best practice to integrate that authority's financials into our own, and that's the Recreational Facilities Authority. In your governance letter, there's sort of boilerplate language about measuring post-employment pension liabilities based on actuarial tables. I just wonder if you could let us know how often those data are updated. I saw in one of the auditor's notes that the actuarial tables run from 2016 to 2020, but I just want to make sure that our liabilities related to post-employment benefits are reflected sort of at market value based on the most up-to-date actuarial information. I noticed that there's an additional letter related to the Sheriff's Department internal controls for 2 different programs. I just wonder why we're seeing that this year and have not in the past, at least based on my recollection. You addressed my question on leases. I had a question, but you pretty much answered it. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about the restatement of our beginning balance related to deferred taxes and what that involves. I don't recall seeing that previously. And then my last question, I just wanted to get your sense. Our accounts receivable as of the end of the fiscal year were about $1.4 million, most of which were property taxes, which is not surprising. Our treasurer does a fantastic job of getting people to pay their taxes on time. But I want to, stepping away from that fact that she's doing a great job, I just want to know your feeling about our total receivables as a portion of annual revenue, and if you think that it's a healthy number or if it's too high relative to our annual revenue. That's all I have. Thanks.
Okay. So just going, start from the top here, the financial statements. This year, that GASB 87, although it only looks like a few statements there, it was a unbelievable amount of additional time needed to get all that together and get that disclosed properly. It's also just a little bit it's a huge time crunch on our end. Going forward, we absolutely can get it done earlier than the morning of. I am with you on that. That's a little too close. We would like to get it to you, a week before if possible. And it's really just that Gatsby 87 this year has really put a whole wrinkle in our entire audit schedule. Going to the authorities in the report. You mentioned the rec authority, but the rec authority is, if you look on Exhibit 1, and then also in the back of the report, there's separate schedules for that rec authority. So that one is in there as well. Yeah, Exhibit 1, page 17 or page 5.
Okay, sorry, I missed that.
Oh, it's all good.
But
Yeah, the far column there.
The Water and Sewer Authority is not, and they are audited separately.
Oh, okay.
And that might be,
I totally missed that, that's my fault.
that might be because the Broadband Authority and the Rec Authority, there's no staff. And it's
Right.
very limited in where else to put it but our books, whereas the Water and Sewer Authority there's more there.
Yeah. Okay, I got you. Yeah, just, to me, it seems like this audited financial statement should be a complete picture for the county. But yeah, the rec facilities authority is there, and I apologize for missing that. Then, I guess my related question is, would it make sense to state the water sewer authority's financial position more overtly than it currently is? Because right now it's sidelined as a note, right?
Yeah, and so the reason that authorities are included in the counties or they're not included, it has to do with control and board control.
Okay.
And, can't say that that's kind of been just a historical way we've done things, but the rec authority is included, the water and sewer authority has never been included. So it comes back to, control and board control. If they have their own separate board and can kind of let them make their own decision. But it comes down to the board control mostly.
All right, I'll leave that lid on that can of worms, thank you.
Next question was related to the OPEB liabilities. So those are evaluations we get from the actuarial. We really have no say over the actual numbers there. And some of those numbers, like you said, in those notes, there's dates going all the way back to 2016. And they change their assumptions and discount rates every 2 years, it seems like, and then other assumptions are on different schedules. There is an annual update and recalculation of the actual liability. So that is an annual change every year for the pension as well as all the OPEB plans. And you'll see that on this year, let me try to get to, if you go to page 54 or 39, this is just for the pension, so you can see this year, at the beginning of the year, the top right number, the 3.4, that was your pension, this was just for the county side, that was the pension liability at the end of last year. As you can see at the very bottom, it got to a negative 11, so it actually swung all the way to an asset this year. That is mostly due to that net investment income number, that 3.9 million. These numbers are based on prior year numbers. So they calculate these pension liabilities, these OPEB liabilities, based on the year ending June 30th, 2021. That's why those dates look a year behind there in that schedule. So as you know, the market in that 12-month stretch kind of went through the roof. Yeah. And that's why this, it swung such a wild swing just in this year, it's a prior year. I would expect it, and I don't know for sure, but just based on the market in the 12 months from June 21 to June 22, I would expect that number to come crashing back down, swinging all the way back to a liability there, just because, again, they kind of change their assumptions every once in a while. If they get to where they're actually changing their assumption on the inflation rate, that will have a pretty significant impact, as well as the net investment income there. I wouldn't expect to be anywhere close to that number next year. So it's a big number that moves around quite a bit.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure that through your annual audit, you're actively engaging with these numbers, because obviously pension liability is super important to us, and I guess I fear by its nature it could be left sort of unchecked or unupdated, but it sounds to me like this is all pretty dynamic, and you seem to have a very good handle on the reason for fluctuations year to year. So thank you.
Every 2 years, the state is revising that VRS rate that we have for each locality. Schools is a little bit different. And so they're looking at all of this data, and it'll impact our rate going forward 2 years at a time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so next one is the sheriff letter. This is historically, we've always kind of done this letter. I guess it just wasn't included in the packet to you all before. So there's nothing new there. Nothing to be alarmed by. It's just a different auditor public account requirement that we issue those letters to them.
Okay.
The restatement beginning balance was related to, there was a deferred revenue from property taxes adjustment from the prior year that didn't get adjusted last year. So that's why it had to be just kind of, instead of running it through the revenue this year, it was a big enough number that we restated the beginning balance to where it should have been.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
And the last with the AR of.
Yeah, I was just curious, if like your gut is that's a fairly manageable number.
It definitely doesn't cause any heartburn for me.
Yeah.
It's nothing that, without doing an analysis of kind of looking at other similar sized localities, just off the top of my head, it seems to be it's definitely comparable to prior years and comparable for the size as well.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. Sorry for all the questions.
No, of course.
Any other questions?
I'm just sorry that you can't join us in person this year, and thank you for joining us today to walk through this. Obviously, you work for a lot of different counties and review a lot of different books. Is there anything that we can do better or do going forward to help you with your processes?
Nothing stands out. I enjoy working with, I mostly have to bother Debbie in the treasurer's office. We enjoy working with everyone there. Everyone's always extremely helpful and very quick in getting us what we need. So from that standpoint, from an audit standpoint, no, there's nothing, no reason or no criticism needed there. From an internal control standpoint, there's no issues that we found, no real improvements that are needed. You can always, segregate more duties, have more, top level reviews, but it's for a county the size of Rappahannock, we deem your controls to be appropriate and working correctly.
Thank you. And thank you to our friends at the school, too, for helping us get a clean bill of health every year.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Excellent.
Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
Josh, well, I'll let you know if we have any other questions that pop up after today.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank
Josh.
you.
Appreciate it. All right. In for public comment. All right, at this point, I'm going to open public comment. Anyone wishing to speak, if you'll please be recognized and give us your name and your district when you come to the microphone. That way the folks that are on Zoom also know. I'd appreciate it. I assume that's why you were here.
Working, so excuse me, but, my name's Bill Fletcher, and I'm from Piedmont District, but because of a flood in my house, I'm living in the town of Little Washington. much to my dismay. But I wanted to comment on a few things. One, I was watching the news the other night, and I saw what happened in Moore County, North Carolina. Some rednecks or terrorists attacked a couple of substations, and they're without power. And I started looking at, I think about Rappahannock when I hear about a national disaster. And I may understand it more than most people because my father used to represent Page Power and Potomac Edison and Allegheny Power before this new place bought it, where we pay the highest electricity cost in the state. I don't know if people understand that, but most, and if we had a solar farm, I've been contacted because I own some property in different areas for solar farms. They can produce electricity at 4 cents a commercial hour. So, and Rappahannock Electric doesn't produce any electricity. None. They own no facilities. They buy it all on the retail market. That's why we're paying so much. If you look at the solar ordinance you have in Rappahannock, it's really prohibitive from having a solar farm. And I think with the country being forced into electric vehicles and emissions and all, if we don't have some places where we can have electricity and serve this county, we're going to be in real trouble. Real trouble. And I'm an old timer, and Dad taught me, he said, prepare for the worst and hope for the best. I'm fine. I've got a generator and a number of gallons of fuel. I can run my farm for 6 months and not have to worry about the rest of the people. But I do worry about the rest of the people, and I think it's the Board of Supervisors' job to worry about the county and help guide the county. I think you're failing in that regard on the electricity issue, because the real danger of Rappahannock is if we have a major snowstorm and the electricity goes out, what do? Read the book 1 second after if you see what will probably happen to the nation in a short order and if there's an attack of some time. The other thing I wanted to mention to you is I've got a fair amount of timberland, and I had the my lower farm, I call it the Miller Farm, harvested by a guy from Flint Hill 10 years ago. And he hired a person from West Virginia, and they did more damage to the mountain than I got out of it. I think you all should help the Commissioner of Revenue to determine who the good foresters are. Also, I've had forestry plans on our farm for the last 50 or 60 years. And I had this group called Conservation Forestry come in, and them trying to make my forest a sustainable forest, which is really fascinating. I'll be glad to take anybody up there anytime it's dry. It's on Turkey Mountain, so it's not too far. It's about a mile from Sperryville. But what the other foresters do is they high-end the forest. They take all the best trees out, and they leave the black gum and the ash and the other trees that have died. So that's taking up the canopy. If you look at Turkey Mountain now, it's tight. You can see nothing through it. Well, when a tree gets next to another tree, they stop growing this way. They just grow up. I didn't know that. I guess most of you all do. But they were logging my property, and they cut a yellow poplar that was that big. It was over 200 years old because the forest was so tight. You all have forestry programs submitted to the Commissioner of Revenue, But they don't mean a damn thing. They aren't helping us at all. They aren't helping the health of the forest. And there's so many invasive species coming in. If they aren't maintained, we aren't going to have any real forest. I mean, I'm not getting much out of my timbering operation now because I want the guy to go open the canopy up so the rest of it can grow for the future. Right now, if you come up there and look at it, where they thinned it and cut, they cut the worst trees and leave the best trees, because they want the genetics from the good trees. What the normal foresters do is cut out the great genetics and leave you with the junk, and your forest continues to get worse and worse every cycle. And if you want to improve the county, you should change your forestry ordinance to make the forests in Rappahannock sustainable. I wish the guy from the park was here, because you can go up there and the timber up there is horrible. It's not like it was in the 20s and 30s. They need to do something to the forest or it's going to dry. It's horrible. And you've got an opportunity here with your ordinance to maybe save the people in the forest in Rappahannock. This forester I've got tells me there's a band going through Virginia where all the oaks and all are dying, the ash, everything. It's a big, and it goes through Fauquier. I remember the name of that county and a couple others. And part of it's in Rappahannock. And if you all don't cure it, it's going to spread. So I'd mention that to you all for something you might want to think about or talk about. And if any of you want to come see the difference in a forest, you can come up there. I'll be glad to show you any day that it's dry. I'm not going up there when it's wet. The other thing I think the county should do, you all have got this emergency services coordinator. Well, it would seem to me that you all want to see what assets each farmer had on his farm in case of an emergency. And I don't think it would take that much. The farmers would probably be glad to tell them. But the other thing is, I've been trying to find out, I've asked 3 or 4 people how many houses are in the county. Nobody knows. They've got guesses, but nobody knows how many houses we've got. Well, you got to have a little better bookkeeping than that. You don't even bookkeep on the wells so you can check on the water quality and the water amounts. I mean, come on, you got to get the health department to do something. If you don't, we're going to run into big problems.
Too much longer, please, Bill.
I think that's all I had to say. And I'm not trying to bitch, but my fear has been for years that we're going to have a big snowstorm and the electricity is going to go out and nobody's going to know who's where, the phones go out, and you're going to have a bunch of people freeze and die. And I've been giving money for 20 years for Sperryville Fire Department, and they've done a great job. They've got a kitchen, and they had a bunch of trucks, which I kind of like. The Army trucks, if you ever need them in the winter, they're probably the only thing to get around. There's a big deal about Supervisors about that 8 or 10 years ago, I think, before Gary came. But you're going to have Army trucks and big 4-wheel drives. And does anybody, and they don't have any idea what the assets are. And you all are paying people to do this stuff, and they aren't doing it. I ask you to give the citizens what we're asking for, or what we need. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Anyone else in the courtroom wishing to speak?
Oh, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Bill.
I don't think I can talk that loud. Chris Parrish, Stonewall Hawthorne. So we currently, as far as I know, have 2 signs in the county that have flashing lights on them. One's in front of the high school and one's in front of the fire department there at Amosville. And I've heard numerous complaints about both of those signs. So I know y'all are getting ready to look into speed display signs. And I realize that we do have problems with speeding in the villages, and that something has to be done to slow down the speeders. And that I understand that these speed display signs are effective in slowing down traffic to a degree. And so I think we need to be careful about how we proceed. And I'm suggesting that rather than get, half a dozen permanent signs, to start out with maybe one portable sign where we can set it up in Sperryville for a month or 2, and then Flint Hill, and then maybe Amosville, maybe Woodville, and move it around, and if that doesn't work, then go further. I think that the single most effective thing for slowing down people is, the cheapest way is just to park an empty, cop car, and people, they automatically slow down because they don't know if there's a cop in that car or not. But your average driver around here, they know where the radar is able to set up, and they'll speed in between those positions. And I'm wondering if it's not going to be the same thing with these speed signs. I mean, it's not like there's a cop sitting next to the speed sign that's going to give a ticket. So I do believe it's effective to a degree, but my only request is we consider these portable signs to begin with, and then move them from location to location and see how that goes. If it doesn't work, go further. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Anyone else? Not seeing anyone. Is there anyone in Zoom world that would like to speak during public comment? If so, please raise your Zoom hand and be recognized. Seeing no hands raised, I'll close public comment. And entertain a motion for a consent agenda.
So moved.
And
I'll
also,
second.
sorry.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you very much. Moving into appointments.
Yes.
Madam Chair, could I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Could we have a brief breakdown on the appointees, how they are right now on the library board by district as well?
Should have written all that down.
And I noticed that, unless I'm missing something, none of the proposed appointees are here today.
I didn't ask mine to attend.
No, I apologize.
I thought perhaps I could ask a couple of questions, but there's no one here to ask a question of.
I did not prepare a list of all 9 members, one of which is a county staff person, board appointed, Ms. Jewell, last month, effective January 1. Right now, I believe Jackson just had a first appointee appointed earlier this year, a few months ago.
That was for the remainder of the term, I believe.
Right. And I think all other districts are represented except for Wakefield at this point in time.
With that many members, obviously we're heavy in some
You
districts.
can't have equal representation with 8 members in 5 districts.
I understand that.
Yeah, so-
Mathematically, that would be impossible, but at the same time, we have to be as balanced as possible.
Hampton and Piedmont are the heavy districts, I believe.
But right now, we have no one to ask a question of that seeks appointment to these very important positions. And having this board represented somebody to the Lord Fairfax board some time back, to have that person, that individual usurp this board's authority and actually make a motion and vote to change the name of that facility without any contact at all with this board. I think it behooves this board. We are the elected governing body, and I think if we're going to be making appointments, that these people ought to represent somewhat the board's viewpoints in certain matters.
Madam Chair, Kier Whitson, I'll put forward a motion that we appoint John Beardsley to the Library Board of Trustees. His resume, or at least the content of his resume, is thoroughly reflected in his application. I think he's highly qualified for the position. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll second that.
Discussion, this is
Discussion
exactly
now.
the type of position that I think that we should be discussing. They have turned another appointed position into a popularity contest, and we have people campaigning to have someone appointed to this board. We have 2 current members of that library board basically writing letters of support for a 3rd individual to be appointed, and that board should again reflect this body's, somewhat this body's opinions. It's not their own opinions, if you will. I don't know if I'm articulating that properly, but we have 2 members of the current library board wanting to add a person that they feel would best work with them, and it doesn't matter what this board thinks. And I think that's where this board has gotten out of sync with the public. The public elects this body. We're the political body. We're representative of the people. And then we have these appointees basically going rogue on some of these boards and authorities, doing what they want to do. And there's no one here to even ask a question of today. I would like to find out where Mr. Beardsley or anybody else that we would appoint to the school board, what they think about relocating the library. That is a very controversial issue right now, and there's no one here to ask the question of. So if we could just postpone this vote to at least a later date when we would have the opportunity to ask questions of our appointees or potential appointees, I think that's the better way to do business.
This is, again, one of 8 people on the board.
Well, 9, but
9.
one is taken up by a local government position.
I do have to say that I thought we had adopted the practice of encouraging people to be here and being able to ask questions during the course of the meeting. That's the way we've treated several recent appointments, and I don't understand why we've had a departure from that norm today.
I don't know that we have anything in writing that says they're encouraged to come and speak. I know what we said was if they were here in the audience, we would allow them to speak beforehand so we could all talk to
Yeah,
them.
but that's the way we've treated several recent appointees. And
They were
there
here.
was quite a bit of consensus by the board, if not anything in writing.
You yourself brought that up, that you...
If they were here in the courtroom, I totally agree. They
No, I
should be
think
able
you
to
said that
speak.
you'd like the opportunity to ask questions, and you didn't have one. Well, I don't have one now.
I mean, if I had known that that was the way this was going, I would have expected the prospective appointees to reach out ahead of the meeting so we could have sat down. But as it was, as this is public business and on the agenda, I expected them to be in participation and attendance, and they're not.
I think sometimes they are and sometimes they're not. So today they're not.
Well, and they also could have called in via Zoom and just been available and answered questions on Zoom, but they've chosen not to do that either.
With that many people on that library board, I think we could postpone it for at least a month so that we could ask that question. I don't think they have any business at that pressing that they have to have a full slate of appointees.
We have a motion and a second. I'm going to go ahead and call for the question and take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Abstain.
Nay.
Abstained and nay. Yep. Thank you very much. Yep.
Is this how it's going to be from now on, that when we have an appointee, some of them will be decided in the course of the meeting and some of them will be decided in advance?
I don't know what you mean by that, but if we're going to say that anybody that we're going to potentially appoint has to be here. We need to make that for everything and everyone.
Yeah, I'd be open to that. I'm fully support
Yep.
that.
I mean,
We
I
should be
really
clear, though.
don't understand why
It's gotta be
someone wouldn't have
consistent.
been encouraged to attend. And if certainly someone had been in my district, I would have encouraged them to attend.
So you have your policy 810, and if the board's of a like mind that that should be a requirement, then I would suggest that the policy maybe be brought up by the Rules Committee, recommend a change to say that.
I just don't understand
People
why
must
everything
attend.
has to be formal. Whenever anyone's, asks me, well, I'm up for this appointment, what should I do? And I say, well, we're gonna make the appointment on X and such a day, you should be there. Why isn't that just a matter of course? Why does it have to be in writing?
It becomes clearer.
If you're expected to show up every month for a meeting, shouldn't you have the sense to show up for the meeting where you're appointed?
Well, I think historically, folks,
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
point of order.
Yes, sir.
I think historically,
Commotion here in the background.
I would be totally in favor of requiring, so folks would come and we could ask them questions. I mean, I think that's a great idea.
Well, I guess then my question is, why didn't you agree to postpone until next month when we all could have had the opportunity to talk to the prospective appointees?
Because we don't have that in place now, and I went on board docs beforehand and I looked at the applications, I read them, I said.
I
"Hey,
did
there's-"
too, but I expected
But
to
there's
have an
nothing there, like I
opportunity to
said, to
engage
answer
with
my
the
question.
employees.
I'm just explaining how I came to my own decision.
Understood.
And I read it and I was like, okay, and we have, people have historically been appointed to lots of things that have not showed up. So if we're going to do that, I think it is clear to then change the rules, say, hey, you got to show up, and if you're not willing to show up, and, benefit of the doubt, God forbid that he was supposed to show up, or even Joyce, and that something happened.
Yeah, you would send a note.
Exactly. Well, yeah, hopefully. But I'm fully in favor of, if you want to be on a board, you got to come to the meeting to get appointed. And if you guys want to chat, I think it's a good idea. Because we did talk about it in terms of planning commission, and I think the ability to be able to ask somebody questions is great. I fully support that.
I agree.
Did somebody fall?
I think it was a
Radio.
pager or something. All right, so, Mr. Curry, what do we need to do to move forward on making that official?
That's done. You just voted. If you want to modify policy 810, the board can handle it any way you would like. You can refer that to the Rules Committee, or you can just ask staff to. It
not on
sounds
the
pretty
agenda.
simple.
Does it need to be on the agenda to refer to the rules?
It'd have to be.
Yes.
It'd have to be unanimous. If you add something to the agenda and it's not a unanimous decision, then
Right.
or you can do nothing.
Well, I think it's a good idea to do it. How would you guys like to do it? Would you like to put it on the agenda for next meeting? Do you want to all agree that
I can make a motion to amend the agenda right now to discuss it,
second?
but the action is going to have to be unanimous.
I have to return to my initial point where I don't understand why the supervisor for the district wouldn't encourage the appointee for that district to attend the meeting. Why do we have to formalize everything? Why can't some things be informal?
Because I want it to be consistent for every district. Every time. So it can't be when it feels good and when it doesn't feel good.
I understand
Gotta
that,
be
but
consistent.
You
all
should
I
have a
was doing
motion
was-
on the table. Maybe you could
Oh,
dispense
sorry.
with
I thought
that.
we had
Second.
discussion.
We have a motion and a second.
I guess this is
Discussion.
discussion
Yes,
on,
sir.
on whether you should have the motion, but I don't think you should get into the
I
discussion.
thought we had a
subject to the
motion and a second, and now we're having
To have the
discussion.
discussion about the.
As to whether you should discuss what the motion's about. So
Right.
I don't think you should leap forward into the discussion that the motion is intending to allow.
Until we have it approved by all five.
Right.
Okay.
It's a splitting of hairs.
Mr. Whitson,
How
you
many
have,
angels are on the head of the pin today?
Mr. Whitson, are you in on this motion and second so that we can take a vote?
I don't know what the vote is for.
Motion was, Mr. Frazier.
The motion is to, whether we will add to the agenda the discussion of tasking either county staff or the Rules Committee with changing, what is it?
Policy 810.
Policy 810.
Why don't we, and Mr. Frazier, I'm happy to support it if you would just clarify who you would want to amend the policy or come up with a draft revised policy, either staff or the board's rules committee. I don't think the motion should be either or, it should be.
Well, we could send it to the Rules Committee, sir.
Okay, that's fine. I have no problem with that.
I don't either.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion fails.
No,
Doesn't have to be unanimous to amend it to the agenda?
to add it to the agenda, it's a simple majority. To take action on the item that's been added needs to be unanimous.
Okay. So we can have a discussion.
I don't know when you're adding it, I assume it's immediately, so.
Might as well while it's
Yeah.
fresh. Mr. Fraser?
Again, I'm in a quandary because I'm unable to ask questions of somebody that's supposed to be representing the county on the library board. So I think that, it was you yourself, I believe, it was maybe Mr. Carney that had said that they wish that they could, I believe both of y'all did, as a matter of fact.
I definitely did.
That you'd wish that you could talk to some of the planning commission, prospective appointees prior to the meeting, and you didn't, and I didn't have an opportunity to ask a few questions of the appointee today of the library board, or for that matter, any other appointments that we're gonna be doing today, or possibly doing.
I agree with Mr. Carney. I think it's a good idea. So, I think just if the members of the rules committee want to come back with a revised draft, I don't know if we need a separate motion to set that in motion or not.
There is a problem with this, though. If we make it an actual procedure, then we become the ones that are politicizing the position, because there'll be somebody that puts their name forward to be appointed, then there's gonna be a group of people that write letters in support of them, and then we're basically going to be potentially airing the laundry in public. So we're actually gonna be making the position political.
I think we've arrived there, though. I mean, not that, we're already at that place where you have questions, somebody's not showing up, people are writing letters. So I guess transparency and sunshine is the best thing I can think of. Is like, okay, well, you know, you're going to be, if you get on that board, you're going to be showing up to meetings, having people asking you questions anyway. So why not start here? That was at least my thinking. But I mean, I agree.
At least the public will know where they stand on controversial issues like selling the library.
Yeah, I think asking questions and
I
hard.
agree.
You're incurring a large, amount of money as a county
Yeah.
because of the building of a new
Sure.
library.
Yep.
Totally.
I believe we all deserve to know some opinions about that before we made this appointment.
Yeah, it's exactly to your point. Like this person will be on a board that will be deciding these exact things. So
So why did you vote for him without giving us
No,
a
I'm
chance
talking
to
about
talk to him?
I'm saying the process of being able to ask
Right,
questions.
but we just
is
used
the
that
politicizing
process.
it. Well, I'm just saying that I think that process is good to start now at the meeting of appointing.
But see, as the
Anyway,
governing,
this is my
as the
thought.
governing body of this county, we have a right to ask when we feel like it and not ask if we think that it's not necessary.
I agree.
Now, you're gonna make it mandatory, and we didn't do it 5 minutes ago.
We don't have to make it mandatory. I'm just saying that I would be in support of saying, if you want an appointment, it would be useful to come. We don't have to do it. You wanted to ask him a question. I sympathize with you, and I say, yeah, In the past, we've appointed a lot of people who have not showed up. I mean, I don't know about a lot, but people who have not. So
I agree.
I don't know. It's
Well, if they're a like-minded individual, I may not have a question for them.
yeah.
The problem is, we have appointed people that became woke. They became woke and they usurped this board's authority.
I would say that I honestly can't think of a recent appointee that hasn't been present or that we haven't had an opportunity to speak to in advance for a position of this magnitude. Planning Commission, of course, we had a lot of interest in that, the most recent round of appointees. And this, we always, over the last several times we've had appointees to the library board, we've had a robust response and a lot of folks to choose from, and they've come to meetings and made their views known. And today we didn't get that. And that's really unfortunate.
Madam Chair, I just want to clarify procedure here, and I don't want to go too inside baseball, but should the last motion not have been to amend the agenda and to add a discussion item as opposed to taking action on this policy 810. It just occurs to me that we might put the cart before the horse. Maybe Mr. Curry could clarify.
I believe the last motion was to add this agenda item, and
Oh,
if
okay.
there is a
All right, I
motion
didn't do that
to,
part.
if there is a motion to actually amend something, then that is
Okay.
an addendum item, which would have to be unanimous.
So I put forward a motion that we task the rules committee with amending, in draft form, policy 810, along the lines of what Mr. Frazier has articulated regarding the requirement that appointees attend a meeting at which their appointment will be considered.
One second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those-
I think it might be a good thing going forward. I wish we all had been afforded this chance today, or in January when it would have been possible.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
I abstain.
What was your vote?
Aye.
Thank you.
That's not unanimous, so it will fail. I guess the board member can ask for this to be added to a future agenda if it's still of interest.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
We'll
you.
talk about it later, I guess.
Can we add it to the January agenda?
Yes.
We can do that. All right, moving into old business, tax relief.
Oh,
for-
we're still on appointments.
Oh, are we?
Yes.
Oh, shoot, sorry.
Second appointment item is regarding the Rappahannock Rapidan Community Services, the board for that body. There are 3 appointees from Rappahannock County, and they serve 3-year terms. 2 of those terms found themselves to be expiring in this calendar year. The Code of Virginia suggests that those terms should be set up so that they are staggered multiple years. Mr. Goff and I discussed this state code section, and our request is that if the board is in mind to appoint individuals to these 2 seats, that you do so through the resolution that's attached that recognizes the state code section and then appoints one individual to 1 year and the other individual to 3 years, thereby fully staggering your terms ending 23, 24, and 25. Of the 2 vacancies that are upcoming, you have 3 applications available to you attached to board docs: Ms. Crooks, Ms. Krebser, and Ms. Farrell. Ms. Crooks is with us today.
Madam Chairman, since the other 2 appointees are in Wakefield District, did you have any thoughts on this?
Given what we just went through, I think it's best if the person that's in the room actually has an opportunity to speak to us, and we can, there's no rush to do more than 1 today.
Your existing member whose term doesn't expire until 24 is here, and Ms. Brooks, I believe, is the chair of the body.
Yes.
She can let you know if there is an issue that not having a full slate will cause an issue on the board. Other than that, Ms. Crooks certainly
Crooks
can
can
provide
speak.
some input.
Ms. Brooks, why don't you come up and give us a real quick, what you think what would be best for your board today?
You need to go to this
Go to the
microphone.
mic, please. And then Ms. Crooks is here, so she can speak for herself.
I'm functioning as board chair. In that capacity, I want to have a full board in January because I need to appoint committees. And those committees and those appointments could be very important to the county. How we appoint certain committees will make a difference in the services we get. For that reason, I would prefer having you make that decision today. I obviously, had we known that Ms. Crooks or the other 2 should be here, we would have asked. Other than that, I'm very satisfied by the applications that have come forward.
When is your first meeting in the new year?
It would be the 2nd Tuesday of the month.
So very likely Wednesday the 4th would precede that.
Could I ask a question or 2 based on something that you just said? Actually, 2 things you just said. Would that be permitted?
Yes, sir.
You said that based on the applications, you were very happy with the.
I looked at the applications online.
Right, but this is what bothers me about this appointing process. It's really not what another member of that body feels, it's what this county needs. And maybe what the elective body thinks would be a good appointee.
I agree,
So when
that's
we-
your decision.
When we start appointing people because they may work with you or work with the others, I think we get away from what actually works best. But then you said, prior to that statement, you said that these committee appointments would have a large impact on the services that the county would receive. Why is that?
I think it depends on who you put on various committees. As chair, I do have recommendations that I make, and having a full slate when I make that recommendation is important because it will help the board be more effective, both for this county and for the board itself. So having a full slate and knowing who's on is important. Not critical. We can
But see,
certainly move ahead.
I don't understand that statement. If you didn't have a full slate, you still got these committees, you have an organization that's supposed to
Exactly.
furnish services to this county. Why would missing one or two members from any jurisdiction affect that jurisdiction's ability to have services provided?
It won't make a long-term difference, but it does make a difference in terms of where we put various people. And what that difference is, I can't predict.
Well, you're just talking about the committee members. I'm talking about the services, but you said they were linked together.
The committee members are advocates for services for this county. And as such, their understanding of certain programs and how they affect people is important. But I am not making recommendations of the three appointees. That's not my job. My job as chair, with other counties as well, is to make sure we have good people seeking to be on the board. And I've done some of that here, and it seems to me appropriate. Your decision of who of the applicants you have are the strongest for the county, that's your decision. And I would be happy to live with anyone who comes on board.
And it sounds like we can make that vote in January if we'd like to wait, since the others aren't here, but Gail is here.
While we have an opportunity, Ms. Brooks, would you just mention, please, and I just wanted to thank you, and if you wouldn't mind mentioning your recent recognition of the Community Services Board? Would you mind? And I personally just wanted to thank you for all the hard work that you do.
Thank you very much. The Community Service Board, under the leadership of Jim McGrath, has really grown. It does, we've been very occupied in the last few months with developing a strategic plan. And in that plan are issues that directly affect the county. So I'm very pleased by what seems to be coming forward and will be approved by the board. I'm very pleased that there's been a huge increase, 23% increase in the funds that have been coming to the board and in the services and the quality of the services. There will be decisions in the next couple of years with regard to placement of more services here in the county, and those, I think, are going to be very important to our citizens.
Thank you for that. I really do appreciate it. Great article in the Culpeper newspaper. I think it was over the weekend I saw it, so.
Very good.
Thank you for bringing us all up to date. And I think it's really unfortunate if we seem to be jumping to a conclusion that the last appointment is just like this appointment because the people aren't in the room. But to my mind, the last appointment and this appointment are very different because I had people that applied for this position who, although they don't reside in my district, I have certainly known them for a long time, and I know how well they know this county and the people of this county, and I would be delighted to appoint them to this board. And so I would be delighted to put the name forward of Fran Krebser to appointment to this board. I think she would do a phenomenal job, and we are lucky to get people of this caliber to come forward to take this kind of a position. And I really appreciate that she made a point to reach out to us ahead of the meeting to see if there was anything she could address with the members of this board. Thank you very much.
I'll second your motion, and I would just add, I note in the resolution that's attached to board docs in our agenda, that the term expiration dates for the two members that we would be appointing would be December 31st, 2023 and December 31st, 2025. Not to get ahead of things, but I think we ought to appoint Ms. Crooks as well, and I just wonder administratively who should have the term expiring sooner, what makes most sense out of Mr. Curry planning.
I think it's completely up to the board, and if one of them, for whatever reason, can't fulfill their term, then whoever comes behind them will fill the balance of the term. So this is an opportunity to get those terms straight. The other way around, members can serve 3 full terms. So if you think one of these folks is willing to serve 10 years,
you brought this up.
you could pick that person to do the 1-year term. I don't think Ms. Crooks wants to serve 10 years, but.
Well,
It might be good for us if.
Ms. Smith, I wonder if you amend your motion to for Ms. Krebser to serve through the end of 2025, since she's a citizen appointee. Ms. Crooks is already obviously working within the county. I think it would be easier for us to reappoint Ms. Crooks after 2023 than it would be.
If there's going to be a motion, it should be to adopt the resolution with the names placed in certain spots.
All right, well, Kier, you took the words right out of my mouth. So I would move that we adopt the resolution attached in the packet with Fran Krebser's name to be attached to the term expiration December 31st, 2025, and Gail Crooks, whose virtues I should also extol because we are so lucky to have her in our county as a devoted public servant, and you do an amazing commute in addition to everything you do in our county, and to attach her name to the December 31st, 2023 expiration date.
Thank you. I'll second your amended motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Roll call, please.
Oh,
of the
roll call.
resolution.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Frazier.
Aye.
Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Carney.
Aye.
Mr. Whitson.
Aye.
And I also. Great. Now we're going into the old business. Can we take a 5-minute break real quick, please? Recess.
I know, Miss, you're done, you did it, but Miss Graham is waiting to get back to her office.
Yep, sorry, Ms. Graham.
Yeah, 5 minutes apparently, which never seems to be 5 minutes.
Do we need to set that?
Presentation of the key numbers to this tax relief act, or not act, ordinance. So my suggestion from before, there were many, many parts to it, all of them with the idea of better equity across what is offered to our citizens, our senior citizens. And also looking at the time, I looked at 25 counties in the Commonwealth and how they approach tax relief. One of the items that I felt would help make it more fair was to base the maximum award on a number that's the average of the value of a dwelling on property for all of the properties 20 acres and less with dwellings on them in the county. So that number, is that 2,500 maximum award is based on that piece of property. Before it didn't matter. You could have someone getting tax relief on a much more expensive dwelling, which again, to me, that's not equitable across the board. The next key numbers have to do with the household income. And one is the threshold where someone would get 100% tax relief. And that number is based on 2 times the poverty threshold for householders 65 and older in the county. And so that 25,000 people with household incomes up to there would get a full benefit up to the maximum award. And then the upper limit, which we haven't had before, because before it was an all or nothing situation. Right up to this certain number, they would have 100% tax relief, and then next increment up, they would have 0. And this curve helps to address that. The upper number, the 40,000, which would be the maximum household income we would consider, is based on half the median household income in Rappahannock of all categories. And to get between that 25,000 and that 40,000, you'll see there's a curve which gradually the percent that they're paying increases as they get closer to 40. And likewise, as they get closer to 25, it gradually decreases so that it's a more fair type of curve than a straight line. I know that in the spring, I had looked at the idea of a matrix, and the more I looked at that, it was difficult to bring equity, mainly because when you look at, and my sample is small, the people who are already in the program, but when you look at the assets, it's all over the board, whether it's land holdings, a big parcel they live on, or liquid cash. And I felt that while bringing the asset level down to the maximum any other county that I looked at has, which is 200,000 from 250,000, I felt that if we increase the acres allowed to be, the acres that would be discounted or not included in that number would make up that difference, so that we are giving precedence to people who are land poor, the people with maybe a bigger homestead. So we wouldn't count up to 10 acres of their homestead as part of their assets. Instead, before, it's up to 5 acres. So that would really make up that difference in a lot of cases. Average parcel, average acre value for acres other than the house site can be, 20,000 down to 7,000 or so. So for these parcels, chances are it's at the higher end of that. So 5 acres could be about 50,000. That's just a rough estimate. So I felt like that addressed some of that, the type of assets. It was too difficult to apply because you'd have to analyze each person, what it is that you're looking at as far as assets, and it gets too hard. So I wanted to address it the other way, with decreasing the threshold, but allowing 5 acres more to be excluded from that number. So that's, I won't read the ordinance itself. It also goes into deadlines and a few other things. Do you have
So
questions?
just frame the big picture here is that the ordinance as it's written now has some very firm numbers that are included that would screen somebody out of the program through the multiple tests. And so the proposed ordinance would change that around a little bit and have these concepts that Mary's identified and then empower the Commissioner of Revenue to apply those concepts so that the program can be fluid year to year. And you wouldn't have to come in and amend this ordinance every year to change the number to track whatever the poverty level is or the median income is, et cetera. So that's the shift, in addition to applying the concepts that Ms. Graham has put forward, and in particular that phasing out of the benefit rather than just be a cliff for certain people. It's expanded, and then it phases out as you get to the people that may qualify for the program, but who have a higher salary or higher income.
Can I ask a question? How would you determine year to year the average household income?
It's the Census Bureau
So
number.
in between those 10-year period, it'll be.
They have annual
American
numbers.
Community
Oh, sorry.
Survey.
That's what I'm asking. Every year they come out with
Yes.
They have annual numbers,
data
yes.
and it's up to you round up to the 5,000.
Yeah, I'm going to be rounding up. Yeah, it would be in the taxpayer's favor.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah, my
Madam
inclination.
Chair, with appreciation to Ms. Graham for her work on this, I'll put forward a motion that we authorize staff to advertise a public hearing to consider an ordinance amendment to Rappahannock County Code, Chapter 151, Article 12, tax relief for the elderly and disabled.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion?
Thank you for getting rid of the boxes and replacing it with a curve. I imagine that will be much easier to navigate.
It will, and also fairer, believe it or not.
I believe it.
Has the county attorney been able to go through this?
I have.
You have, so this is
Yeah.
clean enough to go forward with?
Yes, I did speak to Bonnie about it, and I did look at the code section, and I don't have any problem or criticism of it.
I see that picked up on an old error too was a
Yes, I found that.
line 26 and 29 had a busted reference.
Yep.
So that's good.
I do appreciate the fact that you brought this to us.
Thank you.
It is just wonderful information. How much extra work is this going to be on you?
I already, interview each person and analyze their numbers every single year, so it's
Shouldn't be any.
no different,
Excellent.
except that I am expecting more people. So,
Thank you for doing this. This
Yeah.
is incredible.
This
I would
is
love
great.
to hear an update, whenever you feel like
Yeah.
you've got how it's going or,
whenever
Well, let's not
people,
get ahead of ourselves. The
Right.
public
Yep.
could come with a hue and cry and decide
true.
this isn't what they want.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
thank you. And I want to thank Bonnie for helping me with the drafting and all of that.
Good teamwork.
So I'm going to stay here.
Thank you both.
Next.
Next.
Yes.
The next proposal was for moving to what is called file by exception with our personal property filing. And it's a system that it would be similar to most surrounding counties and in fact, most counties within the Commonwealth. It's a system where the taxpayer reports changes to our office.
Personal property.
Of personal property. So if they've sold a vehicle, if they bought a vehicle, if a vehicle is totaled, and all those sorts of things. And barring a report, we accept what they filed the previous year as correct. I have found in the years I've been administrating this part of our duties, so many of the 20% of people who are consistently late every year are either new people to the county who came from a county where it was filed by exception, so they're caught off guard, or people who just can't get the concept of it's not a bill, but you still have to do it. There's myriad reasons, and I would suggest that it makes it's more fair, I believe, and I think that the way we administer filings, which then lead to taxes, should be fair across the board.
And so I want to point out that there's also a waiver of filing for certain vehicles, and it's, in essence, Ms. Graham has a connection to DMV, and she's getting that data.
Right.
So if she has good data from DMV, your change in status is waived as well, because you're
Right.
getting that data. It's only those rare occasions when that people wouldn't fall into that. So that's the majority of people are going to be covered by the DMV transaction.
True.
And that's the exception that still have to advise the Commissioner of Revenue. Now, as we talked before, I believe in the budget discussions, while the last subject is very hard to predict the financial impact because you don't have the census of people who meet the various tests, and you don't know who's going to actually apply. This, we can predictably know that we are going to lose all of the late fees that are associated with people not submitting those blue forms, which is about $45,000 a year.
Yeah, that's what Debbie has told me, yes.
That doesn't mean it's not a good thing. It just, we know that that's going to happen if we change this process. The flip side is Mary's going to have a lot more time in her office to apply the earlier topic because she's not going to be messing with thousands of blue forms. And,
Right.
and all that.
And other work in general.
And other work in general.
And no postage.
That's right. I don't think we
No,
pay
although there's not
$45,000.
$40,000 worth of postage, I know.
It's real.
But still,
Yeah.
it's a little something.
Now, that is a question because some counties who are filed by exception still send a statement. And I would love to hear people's opinions on that. If you want to just call me.
My experience from my last county is it was, you don't know anything until the bill shows up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
that seemed to work just fine.
Yeah, it's either way. I just wondered how people here felt.
Well, then I'd like to move to authorize staff to advertise a public hearing to consider an ordinance amendment to Rappahannock County Code, Chapter 151, Article 16, Penalties and Interest, due date.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just want to say that if you're sending out tax bills based on previous year's form,
We're sending out tax bills based on the report from the DMV.
right, but if that's not accurate, then the county may be taxing for something that they could have changed and didn't, so is there going to be a time?
So rather than there being a May blue cycle, there might be a billing corrective cycle where somebody gets a bill, they say, oh, I haven't had that card for 3 years, and then they have to clean it up at that time.
We already do that because a lot of people ignore the blue form because there's no money due with it. So they ignore it, and then when they get a bill, yes, they'll tell us.
I don't really ignore it, I just procrastinate.
You weren't pointing fingers. All right. We have
Doesn't matter what I get from the government, I procrastinate.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, if I could make a motion, please, that we go ahead and amend the agenda to move up Spurryville Volunteer Rescue Squad Pilot Staffing Program to the next item on the agenda, please.
Second.
Our volunteers have been very patiently waiting.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Makes total sense.
Yeah, I don't think we thought that they would necessarily be here when the agenda order was set. Thank you.
Thank you.
I intended this to be just an update to make the board aware of the pilot program, where we were with the pilot program, how it was going generally, and to plant in your minds that we need to think about post-pilot program and whether or what should be considered. The program was put in place in the middle of October and set for full 3 months to end at the end of January.
Right now, the staff that is hired on in your fire and rescue department, working under Sean Polster, those individuals are available to take a shift at Sperryville Volunteer Rescue Squad through this pilot program 2 days a week. I think they've mostly centered in on a couple providers that are pulling most of those shifts. And I think that makes a lot of sense just for understanding an environment, and you know, you have somebody new coming in every day, you're kind of training, this is how we do things here. All reports I've received is that the fit and the process is working just fine. And the members your county employees are acting as an extension of their volunteer crew and force multiplier for them. The cost is expensive, and that is because the county has hired on very experienced paramedics who are appropriate to be assigned to the quick response vehicle, who might be at patient side by themselves waiting for an ambulance, and we've talked about that in the past, and you want to make sure it's not your first rodeo when you're doing that. Knowing that you will continue to have that quick response vehicle ALS 1400 in place, it is likely possible to fill this sort of program with a lesser qualified paramedic who might be a new paramedic or one of the lower EMTI. I'm not really familiar with all the lingo, and which would command a lesser salary probably. We don't have those people as county employees right now, and so that's something the board would want to think about going forward if we intend to continue supplementing volunteer staff at Sperryville or other stations. It probably could be done more affordably than is being done right now in this pilot program. Further, the number of staff we have in our roles right now, they're capable of pretty much providing 24/7 service in the quick response vehicle. And then we are able to provide service to Sperryville Rescue, but some of that has come in the form of overtime for county employees. And they understand that they have to pay back the county for that straight time or overtime, whatever it might be. And we try to keep it not overtime if possible. If the program were to be extended, the county would be looking to expand headcount to more predictably not require overtime. But we don't want to do that now because we don't know if there's life after pilot program or if that's the intent of the board. And lastly, this is one of 5 EMS companies, volunteer EMS companies in the county. And staff firmly believes we need to be looking at this holistically across the county. The pilot is very good input and information on how this type of support can work, but would it work at other companies and which companies? I've been fairly vocal to say we very likely do not need county staff in 5 different volunteer company stations to supplement. That very likely is not cost effective. So a broader review needs to be conducted to understand how can we do this community-wide. If the other companies need support, how is the county going to approach that and what areas would be bolstered? As you're aware right now, Chester Gap has county-funded but not county employees, paid providers split by Rappahannock County and Warren County. And then Sperryville has these 2 days a week. I didn't realize at the time, but Sperryville has been working on a proposal for post-pilot implementation. And they've submitted that. I shared that with the board, and I've attached it to board docs, and they've put forward some recommendations to expand that to 3 days a week and to shift from 100% reimbursement to an 80-20. So obviously there are a lot of discussions have to happen between pulling the lessons learned out of the pilot and moving beyond the pilot into whatever comes next. There are financial strings attached. There are reality life-saving benefits linked to that. And your agreement suggests that the association and the Public Safety Committee, once they've raised their hand and said, hey, we need help, they are supposed to provide recommendations on the schedule and the plan and all of that, which is really getting into if this is going beyond pilot, we really need the Association of the Public Safety Committee to vet that plan on how to implement this system-wide, or something system-wide if it's not what's happening with the pilot. So I've said a lot. I know you have representatives from Sperryville Volunteer Rescue Squad who can speak specifically to their experience as well as their proposal. And if there are any questions the board has of them or of me, I'm happy to try to answer those, and would request that we begin to move the thought of what happens after January 31 and push that to the Public Safety Committee and then the association to get that input. Is it nothing? Is it something? And what is that something?
I would just ask that we hear from President Ward and Chief Summers at this time, if anything they have to add.
Come up to the mic, gentlemen.
And Todd can see just how tall Mary Graham is.
Wow.
There's a trigger right in the back of the top there. If you squeeze it, it's like
down. Hi, everyone. I'm Todd Summers. I'm the chief of Sperryville Rescue and Piedmont District. Martin Woodard's the president of the board. Just wanted to thank the board for approving the pilot. It's been remarkably successful for us, filling a big gap we have in providing advanced life care services to our community, as well as the adjoining districts that we support on a kind of a backup basis. As the administrator said, we have 2 days a week right now, and we're moving to go to 3. The primary reason is that the other person provides all of our ALS care, essentially, only wants to do it 4 days a week, as opposed to 7 days a week, which he's been doing for the last 3 years.
That's on a volunteer basis.
On a volunteer basis. So he crazily said, I'd like 3 days of my life back per week, so we're trying to fill that 3rd day. All this is anticipating and hopeful that the association and the Public Safety Committee can get going on a county-wide approach that maybe could build and learn from the experience we've had at Sperryville. But our most immediate concern is making sure that there is this advanced care to our community. I just want to say the ALS 1400, the quick response vehicle, has been an incredible asset to all of us, but it is one person serving an entire county. And our concern is that while a lot of the time they're all sitting around waiting for something exciting to happen, when something exciting happens, often there's 2 or 3 exciting things happening at the same time. Or it's in one vehicle accident with 2 or 3 patients that require advanced care for all of them, which we've just had recently. So while it may seem we're stacking up lots of paramedics, this is actually a medium approach that really does try to make sure that ALS 1400 is able to serve the county, and then we can back them up, but we also have the capacity to serve Sperryville. So happy to answer any questions, Martin, if you're in ask.
Madam Chair, I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Todd, for coming, and thank you to Martin. I thought your proposal was outstanding, and I think there's a lot of background explanation in it that I think informs decision-making going forward on sort of this countywide approach to supplementing our much appreciated and hardworking volunteers. I guess my basic question in light of what Mr. Curry said in his introduction is right now we have paid ALS folks up in Chester Gap, and then we have 1,400. If we were to accept your proposal in some form, I'd like to hear from you to what extent paid ALS folks operating out of Sperryville Rescue could be or would be a catalyst for the formation of a countywide system that supplemented our volunteers with paid folks. It seems to me that your geographic location right off of 211 with all that happens on the twists and turns up to Thornton Gap, and then also 231 being a fairly dangerous road, and 522 for that matter. I just wonder if, looking ahead, if we do finally settle on some countywide approach that maybe shifts things around, if you think it would make sense for Sperryville to be a host, so to speak, for paid folks going forward on a long-term basis.
Well, I think as folks said, the Public Safety Committee really needs to do some analysis here and look at the different models and the costs and benefits to the county so that the supervisors can make an informed decision. I could make a good case that a triangular approach that would have the corners of the county, if you will, covered with advanced care folks, either volunteer or paid, if they're available, would be advantageous given just the geographic area that we have to cover. I mean, if we're sitting in our station, calls that we get down in Slate Mills or down in lower end of Sperryville Pike or down in Nethers take us 20 minutes to get to the driveway, and as you know, some of these driveways can take 10 minutes to get to the house. And that's if we're sitting in the station, and then if we're at nighttime, it takes us 10 minutes to get to the station to start that whole journey. So all that means that, you know, geography plays a really critical part to the challenge we have in serving a relatively small population. I think that there are other models that you could provide service. There are still lots of volunteers in the system, and we absolutely need to preserve the volunteer system. It's the bedrock of our approach and certainly going to address the affordability challenges we have in the county. I would certainly be arguing front and center that Sperryville needs to have ALS capacity and as much as possible volunteer, and when that isn't available, supplemented with career staff like we've been doing.
Thank you.
And Mr. Whitson, I can tell you that when Mr. Polster and I met with the Amosville board, there were a lot of questions of, well, how do you think career staff could be implemented in our station in the future? And so they're all thinking about this next step. And our challenge as a county entity is how do we interface? How do we get all of these discrete volunteer companies to come together and really think about the pros and cons of the various approaches on how to plan for next year, 5 years, et cetera. And as Chief Summers said several meetings ago, I don't know if you were able to be there, they really think we need to excite the discussion of what comes next. Because you don't want to wait too long. And that's really when Sperryville had a predictable gap that there was this pilot program presented itself as an opportunity to, well, let's just start to work around the edges to see what might work with what you already have in place.
Yeah, just two things to add. One is there's a fire conversation here that's also really important, and I realize that we're unique in that we don't provide fire services along with rescue squad services, but I suspect that there are similar challenges on the fire side, particularly for firefighters that are trained and equipped and able to go inside of a building with appropriate equipment. The second is that we're challenged because of the aging population that we serve, both in reducing volunteer time and people that really have the ability to provide services, including advanced life services, is a dwindling number, but also means the acuity of the patients is going up. And cardiac care becomes an incredibly important part of what we do, and that really does require a medic or a paramedic. And a medic is no longer a level that is provided for in Virginia. They grandfathered the previous medics, so there's several around, including the ones that provide us with care. But now you go from advanced level, which is a step above basic, right to paramedic, which is 2 years essentially and a whole many hundreds of hours of practical on top of that. So they keep raising the bar on the qualifications to provide services that make it harder and harder for us to find people to do it. We have some folks in our community, including some that the counties help to subsidize, but they have jobs in neighboring counties and they have virtually unlimited overtime because there's such a shortage of the paramedics available. So it's hard for them to peel off time to volunteer. Participating with the county has also helped us make sure we're not competing with each other. And I just say I think we have to be careful with Chester Gap that we don't end up in a situation where we're also competing. There are very few paramedics able to provide services. Many of the younger ones don't want to come to Rappahannock because the call volume is low. And when you're a new paramedic, you want high call volume so you build up and retain your skills. So we're looking for sort of a subset of people that are interested in these kinds of jobs, and there are not that many of them around.
Really good points.
Thank you, Chief Summers.
This is not a new problem, though. I mean, Pat Harity, who's on the Board of Supervisors in Fairfax County's 2 years, was behind me in school, 2 years in high school. But anyway, he sent out something, I think it was 2016, 2017. I've still got the email where they had paramedics in April that was approaching $180,000 and would probably top out around $250,000 with overtime, and, you know, by the end of the fiscal year, which is, as we know, June 30. So this is not a new problem, and again, you're competing with those people. I mean, and Charlottesville was in the same boat, Albemarle County, just 2 years ago.
It's a U.S. problem, and COVID didn't help. A lot of people left the field because of the risks of COVID, so.
Yeah, that probably put a real ringer on it.
So from staff's perspective, I want to make sure you're aware of where we are, and then their timely proposal. And there's a Public Safety Committee meeting coming up in a couple weeks, or a week, 14th?
14th.
Okay, that's
So
good to know. Thank you.
we'll get this report there, but having an understanding generally where the board sees this. If you see life past January 31, that would be helpful for Mr. Polster and I to know how fast we should be running and maybe which direction.
Well, and I just wanted to mention too that in addition to the difficulties in terms of the specialization of the training, the increasing difficulty of the training, the demand for people in this field that we're competing with, we also have a very unique situation in Sperryville because it's so isolated. We back up to the park. We can't access things easily in that direction. To trail down 231, we're remote in that direction also. So we really are relying on the 211 corridor and Washington to be sort of our link to the world. And there's not an opportunity, unfortunately, to build a relationship with a neighboring county to step in like Warren County. So that's a drawback, but it might also be an opportunity to look at a different model that may actually suit us better as a county and give us a little more autonomy.
I just want to thank you for your leadership because you saw a problem early and asked for help, and I really do appreciate that you're looking out for your citizens and really understanding your scheduling issue. If there's a way that we can work together throughout all the county EMS and look at scheduling, I do believe if we could come together and agree to share information on scheduling and availability and who can be on whose ambulances and that kind of thing, I think there's some economy there that could help. It's not going to solve the problem, but it's going to help. And then trying to figure out, you know, are there creative ways to get people that want to be trained in a mountainous area in the paramedic world? Is there some benefit that we offer that, you know, Fauquier doesn't, or closer to DC, I don't know, some creative way to get the paramedics that need the hours to come here. Who knows? But that's where I think the Public Safety Committee's really got to get into the conversation pretty heavily, pretty quickly, because your backup, I mean, Madison and Culpeper and Page is probably 20 minutes out.
Yeah. No, it's Washington Volunteer Fire is the only true backup.
Yeah.
Well, and we've had, and the day everything came together with an accident in the high school and something in Sperryville, Amosville was in Sperryville.
Yeah, and Chester Gap came down to help me with a patient at the high school. So we do back each other up, and distances is a bit of an issue. But I think as Supervisor Smith said, Madison runs kind of a centralized approach. And so just for them to get to the border of the county is 15 or 20 minutes before they get anywhere nearby. Now, they did come, you know, a couple years ago. We had a Slate Mills accident, multi-vehicle accident. They did come for that, but that's unusual. Down on the Culpeper end, which is actually Castleton's first due, but we end up covering it most of the time. Their volunteer squad at Salem, their ambulance doesn't get out very often. Their fire folks are more responsive, and the career are overwhelmed and generally don't like to leave the county just because they're usually backed up with calls. So we are, and Page is, you know, from the hospital up to the mountain and then down the mountain is quite a long trip. So, you know, in multi-patient incidents, we expect on them to be there. But for day-to-day stuff, we really do rely on the other companies in Rappahannock and occasionally people to come in from Culpeper or Fauquier to back us up. And that's just more time for our people to wait.
Right. That's tough. Go ahead, Mr. Wilson.
Yeah, Madam Chair, it doesn't seem that we're slated to take action on this. I just want to make sure, in consultation with Mr. Summers, Mr. Woodard, and Mr. Curry, that if we defer any action on this proposal, which again I think is quite good and complete, if we were to take action in January, I want to make sure that that is soon enough without undermining interests of public safety and otherwise.
I think our pilot runs to the end of January. I mean, we'd love to switch to 3 days sooner than that, so happy for you to take our proposal forward, but really it was intended to inform the discussion. So if we get this done in January so that it's ready to move in February, great. If it gets a little bit earlier, Merry Christmas to everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so very
Many
much.
thanks to both of you.
Thank you.
If there's no additional discussion, just to kind of sweep things up, I would just say that I make a motion that we request an opinion from the association and the Public Safety Committee regarding this matter, and that we revisit it at the agenda of the January meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a good day.
Stay safe.
Okay, moving on.
Now we're back to pull down the speed, I think.
Sun turned off, apparently.
Who turned the sun on?
Pull minus speed display signs, just a quick update for the board. At your last meeting, you asked that this become a priority. It took me a little bit of time to reach out. I had a conversation with VDOT folks during our monthly coordination meeting that Mr. Nesbitt noted. Then I sent a correspondence to the residency engineer as well as the district traffic engineer, that role is specifically listed in the engineering memorandum, who has control of where these things go. And requested a meeting, and that district traffic engineer got right back to me and said, "Hey, how about Friday?" And I said,
Wow.
"You got it." So we met last Friday. Mr. Nesbitt, Mr. what was his name? Fromer, I think, and myself. And then Mr. Nesbitt had some other things to do, and so the district engineer and I took a drive, went down, reviewed a few towns, Flint Hill, hit Sperryville. He came through Woodville on the way in, and was going to look at it again on his way out. I did not look at that with him. I can tell you that he generally did not think all of the signs would merit his, he would find a need for, put it that way. Because if you recall, and as is shown on the document here, there are two different avenues to get one of these things, the permanent ones. It's residential or pedestrian oriented, and has certain speed limits, and there's people who are speeding a certain amount. That's A. Or is a non-residential location and it's deemed appropriate by this traffic engineer. That is likely the avenue most of these would fit, because he said residential just doesn't mean there's a house there. It's kind of this residential pedestrian-oriented neighborhood sidewalks and all that sort of thing. So he's going to go back and he's going to look at the information a little bit more, and we're going to come back together and discuss. He said the one that was most likely to garner his approval was the one in Sperryville coming from Culpeper, coming down the hill, where it changes to 25. He was very interested to go back and look at the paperwork on why Woodville's 35 and look at that information, dig into that review that just happened like last summer, to dig into that and see if that could help him support. Flint Hill, all the others he basically is taking under advisement, and we'll go through the process. I told him my goal was not to submit applications that were denied. It was for us to collaborate on where they are appropriate and submit something that's approvable. So we'll see where we get.
Flint Hill has a 25, it's residential.
It does.
Has some sidewalks.
Yes, and so we looked at it all. He just
Not
wasn't willing to. But does the data show that the 85th percentile speed exceeds the posted speed limit by at least 10 miles an hour? And so if it's residential, then that has to happen. If it's not residential, then there's more discretion by him. So whether it's
residential or not.
So for instance.
It might be better not to be residential.
So Viewtown would maybe fit that.
Right. Well, it probably,
I see what you're saying. So it has less contingencies if it's, yeah.
yeah.
Do they have to do another speed study, or do they have an old speed
They
study?
have
they
data, they have some Flint Hill data that they just did for a speed study that was just north of the village. And he said if they needed to, they would put more traffic speed test stuff out, or look back and see when the last data was collected.
That's great.
But as Mr. Parrish stated, usually a cruiser slows people down. I've told this before, but I don't know when was the last time I told it, but at the inception of this public safety committee, the first two supervisors that met with any of the public and the state police and VDOT, different ones, was Mr. Anderson and myself. And we met over at the public house one time. And we had a sergeant, I forget his last name now, the Virginia State Troopers, and he said, even when he's in his cruiser, if he sees another cruiser, he hits his brake pedal.
Right.
It's just an instinctive reflex that we do. And
So enforcement, obviously, those are discussions that I or the board can have with the sheriff, or board members individually with the sheriff. I know each of you probably had some of those discussions, and she's staffed only so much, but old cars, that might be a tactic that she could apply.
I mean, they're out there. Just the other night, I was moving hay with the tractor, and again, I go to use my turn signal. I know they work. I just checked them before I left the field for that specific purpose, and this one car goes around 2 cars behind me and the tractor, and then as I'm going to make the left-hand turn into the field, a car starts around me.
Yeah, I made that point very specifically to the traffic engineer for Viewtown and Upper 211 in Sperryville, that in the passing zone, we have significant concerns of people trying to take left-hand turns and somebody else passing from behind.
Yeah, it's too
Very
regular.
dangerous.
I don't know about Sperryville, but it's too regular on Viewtown.
It's very dangerous, and even along any of the highway commercial stretch, people making a left-hand turn, taking their life in their hands.
Yep.
Whether there's a dotted line or not.
Right. So he came away fully understanding our interests. We'll see where he can get to. He's only been on the job 3 or 4 months. He was not involved in the past studies, except for the one near Flint Hill.
I do understand what Mr. Parrish is saying with not wanting all these signs all over the place. Is there a combination, is there a small unit that we can physically move from location to location and own?
So we can buy battery-powered units that would attach to existing speed posts. And so obviously battery-powered, they're going to have a limited life, and we go back out. What I don't know is whether they are advanced and can collect all the data that the bigger ones can do, which is a great asset. I can look into that if this is something the board would want to just put a few out to see what happens. Mr. Nesbitt had said before he would definitely work with us with land use permit to put up deployed temporary units.
If we use the mobile type thing, some streets are completely out.
Yeah, Viewtown, I don't think you could put one there.
There's no room, no shoulder.
I'd be very curious to know what the engineer says before we decide which approach we're going to take.
Sure.
And I certainly hear what Mr. Parrish is saying, and I hate big glaring signs. I don't want to make the county any brighter at night than it has to be. And I don't believe you can really legislate better behavior in general. You can try all you want. Is it going to be effective? These signs have been shown that they are effective. And they do collect data. You can program them so they aren't so bright, or they don't flash if you're not speeding, or they don't flash at night. So I'd like to think we can have them and have them not be obnoxious and glaring and disruptive. And as we heard with other places that got them, some people protested and said, I don't want that in my neighborhood. And now that they see how well they work for slowing people, they say, I wish we had gotten one in my neighborhood. So it's a tricky path, but if we make some good decisions, I think we will have a good result. I noticed Madison County has one now. Do they have 2?
We have one in Banco and one in Connersville, and the Board of Supervisors didn't ask for
Yeah, they just put them up.
VDOT just put them up.
So totally separate district too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, got it, different VDOT district.
Usually those social districts won't have a time of day with us.
Huh.
They don't like us.
Yeah, I was going through Banco one evening, I thought, Madison got one.
I think the feeling's mutual.
We slowed right down.
Excuse me. It's attached to an existing post, and I did see that.
Yeah. Mr. Fraser, were you done?
I was just saying, he said that VDOT doesn't like him, I think his feeling's mutual.
What the engineer, the engineer stated that what they don't want to do is have so many that then you get the fatigue and
Right.
people just ignore them all.
Right.
That's
So if
what
there are
you have in
areas that
Masters
really
Corner.
need them, I think they're going to be supportive. And there might be some lobbying to try to sort that out. And that's why I wanted, before we drew any lines, where we're, somebody saying yes or no, let's see if we can work it out.
Data-driven analysis is important.
Does he have an idea of when he might get back to you on it?
We didn't cover that. I was just happy that we had a meeting
Yeah.
like a
So
couple.
quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okey-doke.
All right.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary. Moving on to memorandum of understanding.
Okay, as the board is aware, several months ago, you approved a draft MOU related to the Assistance Fire Fund grant that was obtained by Amosville Volunteer Fire and Rescue. That MOU allows the county to program and manage and maintain those grant assets. Since that time, there's been a fair amount of back and forth between the county and Chief Carter, and I think he dialogued with the association some. I sent to you not too long ago a revised draft of that document. Chief Carter got back to me, I think yesterday, and said they're prepared to sign that revised document if the board finds it acceptable. Mr. Goff reviewed it and found it approvable. So if the board would like to authorize the chair to execute this version 3, then we can move on with all of that and get it done.
I'd like to move to authorize the chair to sign version 3 presented of the memorandum of understanding related to AVFR grant-funded radios.
The motion, do I have a second?
I'm sorry, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Many thanks to Chief
Now
Carter
there's
for
a lot
his
of
hard
work.
work on that.
Yep.
Thank you.
We covered that.
All right, we did Sperryville. Going into new business. I asked Mr. Curry to add this to the agenda for me. As painful as it is, and so many, I think, realize that Company 4 many years ago was recognized as the company in the county. I have heard many wonderful stories of parades with flyovers and everything else, but unfortunately, over time, the 2015 study, I think, told us there were issues. 2019, the document that Mr. Curry put on there for us, or that was 2019, Mr. Gerald and I spent multiple weeks, a couple of months, I think, total, trying to go over the books and help get things straight. And it's just been one thing after another. And at this point, I feel like with the citizen feedback and questions that I am hearing more and more from, it's time to send this concern to the Public Safety Committee to really do a deep dive and figure out how we can move forward, what the answer is. And I'm just looking for support to move that to the Public Safety Committee.
You need a motion?
Yes, sir.
I'll put that in form of a motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further any discussion?
I just want to know what exactly will be the topic of the discussion at the Public Safety Committee, besides it just being about Company 4. What would be the possible actions or opinions coming out of that discussion?
Mr. Polster and I have talked about this a number of times. We really didn't want to get ahead of the board. And so, if there's an interest of the board to look, but ultimately it's, what is the current performance of the company? Are they capable of meeting the needs and responsibilities of the services agreement? And if they're not, are there some recommendations to get them there, or what if they can't get there, then what comes then? So this is a tough discussion to happen, and as I've said a number of times,
with Mr. Polster and others, our proposals will always be, number one, a vibrant volunteer company. And if that's not possible, then we will look for option 2 or 3 or 4.
Any
I don't know
other?
if that answered your question.
I mean, I guess I'm just thinking back to when there were some challenges with Company 4, and I guess it was 2019, I guess it was 2019 because it was pre-pandemic.
When they were reporting monthly and.
Right, and we had a chance to talk to them on a monthly basis. I just, I wonder if taking an approach, perhaps hand in glove, and having both monthly reports to the board if they're willing to do that, and plus asking an opinion from the Public Safety Committee, if it might make sense to have a two-pronged approach.
My thought is that they've had since that time to advance the department towards sustainability, and it's regressed.
That's the report I get from a friend of mine.
And, time is of the essence, I think, to either catch it before it falls or provide an alternate plan through the association via other companies or with the county.
It's unfortunate.
Definitely. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Board committee reports. Building committee.
Building committee has postponed its November meeting to accommodate as many schedules as we possibly could. We meet this Friday morning at 10 a.m. for what would have been our November meeting.
Thank you. Recreational facilities.
We keep clipping along, making great progress on many things. Pickleball is back again. Big discussions happening.
Congratulations.
A lot of folks. So that discussion is going on. But we're really excited because we're getting a maintenance plan together. Mr. George Gardner has been spearheading that, and he's been fantastic and provided some real strong leadership there. And it looks like we'll be tidying up some loose ends and just kind of pulling things together, which is really amazing.
That's great. I've been hearing good things.
We've been having robust but efficient meetings. So, yeah.
Let me add, the bid for the fence installation came in, and so the body will be discussing those bids at their meeting on Thursday.
And I can report that prices have gone up, as we all know.
Yeah.
And it is not going to be inexpensive, but it's a good thing to do, and we will be talking about it this week. Yep.
Excellent.
Sounds good.
Public safety. Didn't meet.
No, 14th.
Yep.
It's good to know.
It's going to be a long one, I think. Rules committee.
We did not meet.
Planning commission.
I'm happy to furnish an update. Of course, we sorely miss Supervisor Whitson serving as chair. We had our meeting, I think it was on the 16th, and we took action for a recommendation for the accessory dwelling unit that was on the agenda. And we spent the rest of the meeting on the sign ordinance review, which is on the agenda for this evening.
Yes. Thank you for that work. Fire levy board.
We did not
Did
meet.
not meet. Okay. Treasurer's report. Cash looks good.
Yeah, nothing out of the ordinary to report.
Let's see, anything building or zoning?
A lot of building happening,
Yes.
plenty of zoning. The Comcast notifications,
Prices
price
going
increase. So,
Matters presented by the board. Mr. Frazier?
Drawing a blank, I don't have any notes in front of me, so I don't know that I have anything.
Okay.
That hasn't been addressed already in the meeting.
Ms. Smith?
I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things Mr. Fletcher said in his public comment today. and some of it is related to the installation of the generator at the high school. So what are the next steps and opportunities for completion for that?
Well, actually today, after I set up here, I went home, had lunch, stopped by, and their contractors are working outside work today. The generator's on site, so we are hoping and still waiting for the transfer switch that was supposed to be here on the 22nd, that everything will be in and ready to go so we can cut over electric during winter break.
Oh, great.
Which is the last 2 weeks of December. If we miss that, then we're going to find a different way to do it.
Okay.
The facility's already listed as our primary shelter. I think once we have that under our belt, and one of the things that Mr. Polster and I have talked about is we do need to do some additional training with school staff, food services staff, and social services staff, and to make sure we're ready to pull the trigger on that.
That sounds good. I do think that it's worthwhile to have a discussion about electricity as it relates to public safety. And maybe you all might want to talk about that on the Public Safety Committee. I know we had that terrible storm last winter where families were left 4 or 5 days with no electricity in sub-freezing temperatures. And so, you know, we don't get hit with something like that very often, but when we do, it is a life-threatening situation. So I do think as a county, we need to talk about that. And people, this is what I found so interesting last year when it came up for several families that reside in my district. People need to have electricity at their home because they can't leave their land because of their animals. And it was like, you could get a hotel room, but I can't leave my animals. It's freezing for them too. Mm-hmm. So we really need to think about the lifeline that we as a county need in these critical emergencies. And I know we've been talking about this generator for a long time, and it's so great to have it in place. But other options from a public safety perspective, I think we should continue to engage those too. The sign ordinance is on the agenda tonight, and I just wanted to make it clear that it's for purposes of discussion, and certainly if you all have any feedback on that, I'm happy to answer. There is a nice bit of language in the sign ordinance that when you apply for a sign, if there's any sort of safety-related reason why you can't receive that sign permit, I think that's a great thing, and we should think about putting it in other aspects of our zoning ordinance, because recently in Piedmont District, we have someone build a farm pond in a floodplain, which, as you can imagine, didn't go over too well with his neighbors and raised a lot of safety concerns. So it would just maybe give us an opportunity where we don't have to have everything drawn up in a tiny box, but we can say, it's a safety issue, we can't do this. And then are we meeting on the 2nd or the 5th in January?
Wednesday, the
5th.
You say
Okay,
so.
great.
Okay.
Just wanted to confirm.
Yep.
That's it for me.
Thank you. Mr. Carney?
I just have one quick note, which is a Brightspeed. I've talked to somebody who's not in my district there in Hampton, but they used to have CenturyLink, and now it's Brightspeed, and they called them and had somebody there within 24 hours and redid their entire box for all the houses that feed it.
Wow.
Which has never been done. So possibly there's a light at the end of this tunnel.
Yeah.
But I was really pleased to hear that. I was like, wow. So thought I'd share that with you
I've heard some stories like that as well, and
They
we
have?
see a lot of trucks in our area these days.
And they're still hiring, I hear. So if you know
Yeah.
anybody that needs a job, sounds like maybe you'll not be getting quite so many angry calls anymore.
Mr. Whitson?
Well, I don't have anything, thank you.
The only thing I have is I thoroughly enjoyed the parade yesterday. It was wonderful to have it back, and all the volunteers. I don't know how many people it takes to put that on, but the citizens I talked to that were walking around just loved it and thought it was well run. And the artisans that were there, I hope they made a lot of money for Christmas gifts. But I just want to thank everybody that put that together, because I know that's a huge undertaking, but it was a lot of fun.
You can tell it's a success when the food vendors sell out of all their food.
Absolutely,
Oh,
the
did they?
lines were crazy.
So who gets that food tax money? May I ask when we have an event like that in the town?
Well, I don't know. Let's not talk about that.
We hope Madison did.
You're gonna need it to pay for your new signs.
Ellen got the most of it down there, I think.
All right, if there's nothing else, we can recess until 7 p.m.
Thank you.
I left my phone in the car. I may not be able to make in person the 7 PM meeting.
Okay. So the Zoom electronically or by telephone, if that is a possibility for you, is posted.
Yeah, but I should have checked my phone when we had the break, but I didn't even think about it.
All right.
Thank
So
you,
I'll do the
everyone.
best I can if
I'll be here.
the board will work with me on that.
I bet you've seen the sign ordinance before.
Yeah, but
What do we have on?
we can
We're
participate the
action
best we
required.
can.
See you at 7, Mr. Whitson.
Thank you, Mr. Whitson.